live yet, or? All right, we're live, boys. Look who walked into our building here. The voted best body of all time.
Yes.
By the way, you've been voted the best body of all time on our podcast. We've asked everyone.
Wow.
And the White Rhino. Is that what you are, the White Rhino?
Yes,
Yeah.
I got that nickname from the best body
Tell
of
the
all
story.
time.
Tell the story. That was actually someone's
Wow.
going to say, how'd you get the name? Well,
There it was. Yeah, and it stuck. When Flex Sweeter gives you a name, you keep it.
Oh,
It
God.
was
All right,
back
Flex,
in
how did you come up with the
2009.
White Rhino?
You know, the truth is, I'm really, really bad with names. And I just couldn't freaking remember his name every once in a while.
Yeah.
And I just said, freaking Rhino, and it stuck. I could remember that, but worked out. Worked out good.
There was a racial component to it.
Yeah, it was white. That's what was a
portion.
white,
There was
because,
something-
yeah.
Be careful now.
Meaning
You might
rare.
get canceled.
Yeah, meaning rare, right? White rhino.
I know, but you
rare,
called
yeah.
him a rhino, which is like, was he that big?
Oh,
Like, he
God,
was just-
jeez. You remember what he looked
I
like?
know,
Are
I
you
know.
kidding? Jeez.
It was the powerlifting stuff. Flex had to unlearn me from that. Because when I came up in bodybuilding, from what little we knew at the time, I started competing in '88. So I'd been at it a long time, and I didn't really get, with Flex's help, I didn't get my pro card till 2009. But all those years, I just thought the heavier you lifted, the bigger you got. So I was the guy that was in there trying to do the big heavy singles all the time. I would max every single week. And that's not only not good for powerlifting, it's not good for bodybuilding. And so Flex wouldn't let me, I was a big
was a hard
squat, bench, and
decision.
deadlift guy. He wouldn't let me do a single squat, a single
Really?
bench, and a single deadlift for damn near 6 months. Even when I was training at home, before I came down and trained with him full-time in San Jose, he would have me not squat, bench, or deadlift.
You're known as the world's strongest bodybuilder. You
Yeah,
proved it.
yeah.
How many times over?
I don't know. We had a little Johnny Jackson
Yeah, I
and
remember.
Ben White
Yeah.
and I
What
kind
was
of had
it
a little
called?
thing going. But Johnny qualified for the Olympian that year, so I never
Remember.
really actually got to lift against him. But that was world's strongest pro bodybuilder was the show at the Olympia.
What were the lifts?
It was a bench press and a deadlift. We didn't squat. Yeah.
What'd you do?
You smoke?
Yeah, I think the bench was 610 or 620, and the deadlift was over 800. I forget the exact numbers at the time, but we were wearing the single ply Inzer gear because they didn't want us to tear our
Body
muscles.
suits, yeah.
Yeah, but those didn't add a whole ton of weight to me. I was always relatively lean for a power lifter, and so I didn't fill out those suits very well. So I never did geared lifting. I just refer to geared lifting when you wear those suits, single ply, double, triple ply suits. So I never got good at it. I was never really a very good, to be honest with you, technical power lifter because bodybuilding was my love. And I only lifted heavy because I thought it would benefit bodybuilding. And it just wasn't until I met Mark Bell in 2008, Super Training Gym, Mark Bell.
Of course, I went up there, yeah.
That he kind of really taught me about powerlifting. And I was able to use the correct technique, and it added a considerable amount to my totals, and I was able to set world records with Mark. And by the same token, and this is kind of a lesson for anybody who thinks they know it all, I went to Flex because, he was the greatest of all time and somebody I'd followed for 20 years. And I listened
Didn't
to...
we do the USA together?
We did the nationals together.
The nationals.
We did, yeah. We did nationals together, Masters Nationals, out in Pittsburgh. And I just listened to everything he told me. And, Flex says he was very, Flex, he always looks at your weaknesses and tries to figure out why.
What was your weakness?
I had a huge butt, back, and spinal erectors from squatting with a bit of a forward lean and vertical shins, so I was loading those areas on my squats and deadlifts. But I didn't have a lot of quad. Compared to my upper body, I was undersized in the quads, and that's why Flex says no more squatting and deadlifting. So we got to get more knee angle. And so we did a lot more volume, a lot more range of motion, a lot more knee over toe, more leg extension, even on the leg press.
Yeah.
We had to bring the feet down. He wasn't focused. A lot of people, when they want to lift heavy leg press, they get the feet up high and wide, and it'll load the hips.
Yeah,
And
the
Flex
glutes
was-
are your strongest body part. Yeah.
And so it wasn't about the weight. I remember initially it was frustrating because I used to, we all used to, back when we were younger, load that leg press up and have people sitting on it.
Of course, yeah.
And we, that was kind of our claim to fame.
Yeah.
And then Flex gets in there and then works with my form in such a way that I could hardly press 6 plates on the side. because he made me get knee over toe and not curl my hips up and use my glutes. But all of that kind of stuff, even on the chest, I was a big bencher. I mean, I was a 600-pound bencher, but my chest was undersized compared to my shoulders. And so Flex put me on the dumbbells, made me get really deep, and maybe you can, get the chest up and the shoulders back.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, cheating with it.
It was really difficult for me because, like, it started. We met, I think, in L.A. And we met over Keith at the time.
I had a training partner that I had trained in college at the University of Oregon to play football, and he became an NFL ball player. And Keith Williams, and he also became a national champion track athlete. Yeah, he beat Carl Lewis in the 60-meter indoor, and he was an extraordinary athlete. And then he wanted to be a pro bodybuilder, so he went to Flex, and I just happened to be there with him.
So I'm interviewing Keith, asking him a bunch of questions because I mean, sometimes Jay it's not about money. Your time is more expensive than money. So I'm diving deep into asking him all these questions, and I'm looking at Stan and asking him the same ones, and I'm like, so when are you going to compete? And he goes, no, it's not for me. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, and I kept asking, so when are you going to compete? Oh, no, it's not for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're going to compete. You're going to compete.
Yeah.
And I understood that he had a high intelligence as far as school-wise education about, kinesiology and all that stuff. So I'm nervous because my system, I kind of looked at, guys that are in prison. All they do is bench and arms
every day.
And some of the craziest, and it said that you can't do that. And I was looking at speed skating. They're just in a low squat position all day long. Some of the craziest quads. Cycling, some of the craziest quads. And I'm like, so it's repetition under load. It's not always the heaviest. So I came up with this 20 thing. So, we had agreed on a payment, and I'm like, how do I tell this guy who's used to lifting so much weight that I'm against that and we're going to go the other route? I'm like, this could be effing with my money. He could be like, dude, you're crazy. I'm out of here. I know more than you. And I just gave him my philosophy, and he's like, man, I'm here. You know more than I do. Let's go. And I remember we would go in these deep, deep reps, and he'd just be laying on the ground about to pass out and just like, I love this shit. And I'm like, what is wrong with you, dude? It's just, he just enjoyed and embraced the whole thing. I mean, literally from the beautiful house that he lived in, he moved down to a
little extended stay.
Stay right across the street from 24 Fitness. And
2 bags.
Yeah, 2 bags. And I'm like, man, just different breed. And I understood how well he was doing financially. And I was like, Stan, don't be upset if a lot of guys don't like you. I go, you're a likable guy, but don't be upset. And he goes, why? I'm like, a lot of guys are doing this to get to where you are. You're there and you're doing it for fun. They might kind of, look at that cross-sided. And I remember when, he came up with the cooler, and I tried to set up this meeting with Eric at Europa.
Yeah.
And we're, so I used to always joke, I'm like, dude, we're the oddest couple. Because I mean, like, here you are, blood, just freaking bald head, blue eyes. I mean, you look like 100% like you'd be like the pounder for the HHA, because they have certain guys that they'll go out and fight. So the whole gang, I'm like, and here I am looking like, I'm like, it just doesn't look right. I go, so, and I remember we flew there, and Stan, I think he had shorts and stuff. I'm like, dude, you can't wear that. I go, I know you're used to people coming in and meeting you, trying to get a business deal, but you can't look like that going in. So we went to, like, I think it was Target, like late at night at Target. And I said, hey, listen, just don't be offended if he takes you the wrong way. So Stan's, giving us just that, and Eric is sitting there, and he sits back in his seat, and he goes, I didn't see you coming. Because his education precedes how he looks. You look at him, you're not thinking that he's intelligent as he is. So I'm like, don't get offended, if people perceive you as just, just this beefed up knucklehead, but once his mouth opened, I remember Eric, his whole face just changed, and he sat back in his seat. He was like, huh, I didn't see you coming, so yeah, but it was great. It was great times. I was back in what was it, 2007?
8 and 9.
Yeah, 2008 and 9. And yeah, beautiful times, man. Beautiful times.
All right, take 2. Hey guys, if you have not heard, I've launched my own TRT clinic. TRT Kingdom is now live. And if you'd like to schedule a consult or get more information, make sure you guys go over, check it out, and let us see how we can help with your health needs.
Click the link below.
Shit.
Say click the link below.
Okay. Click the link below.
You know what? Crazy though. You're you haven't a degree, right? Exercise science. You said, and Flex Wheeler's level here with some bro science on how to work out. You're supposed to know this.
Yeah.
Based on the books.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, a lot
Or
has
you're just
a lot has
ego-driven?
changed. To be honest with you, it's hard to say. We've learned so much in the last 10 years. There's so much more science now. Even the things I learned in school, in books, has changed completely. Just muscle physiology has changed. We used to believe there were 3 mechanisms for hypertrophy. One was mechanical tension, and then we had metabolic stress, which was the pump that Arnold talked about, and then we had muscular damage. And now it appears that the mechanical tension is the primary driver, and everything else is just a passenger. And we didn't believe that. We thought it was the pump. That's what all bodybuilders chased.
I only train for the pump.
Only trained for the pump.
Yes.
But what we found is, even though you were training for the pump, it was kind of a proxy for having a high degree of effort and working reasonably close to failure, just maximum muscle fiber recruitment. You're going to get a better pump if you get within a couple of reps. We also learned that in terms of the time under tension and tempo, that they were pretty equivocal, whether it was 2 seconds or 10 seconds. Now we're seeing it's kind of equivocal, which means that people can make progress on either end of the spectrum. And what we also found out, of course, is that you have with performance-enhancing drugs in particular, a lot of the science that's come about more recently is because we have more and more natural athletes going through more rigorous trials to discover, the drivers of hypertrophy. We found out that with the performance-enhancing drugs, you had a much lower minimum effective volume and a much higher maximum recoverable volume. So it was like putting bumper guards up on the bowling alley. Is that people could, depending on genetics, both in terms of their maximum amount of muscle they could probably grow, but also in terms of their how responsive they were to performance-enhancing drugs. Some people could take less and be hyper responders and had more androgen receptor density. So we just discovered that performance-enhancing drugs obviously work, but and there was a huge genetic component in terms of how responsive you are to that. And then if people just stayed at it long enough, if they just trained hard enough, long enough, that they would continue to be able to grow. And that's, like I said, I started in '88. I was training with Aaron Madron.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I
remember.
at
Yeah,
the time, and he was Mr. Intensity. So
he competed with me in '95.
Yeah.
That was
in a
the
small
first
show.
That was the first
Tour
top level
tournament
bodybuilder I ever met.
yeah,
98.
very similar look to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He had the blonde hair at the time.
Yeah.
'95. Remember the tournament
Yeah,
champions?
yeah,
he was
yeah,
in the
yeah.
show
Muscle Tech.
Yeah,
when you were there.
Yeah.
I pulled up the other day just by chance. I was looking through some old thumb drives, video of Aaron and I when he was 18, and I was probably only about 4 years older than him, so maybe 22 at the time, or 21, in the basement of a gym in Eugene, Oregon, posing after a workout in front of the mirror. And even at 18, like yourself,
He had a good physique.
very, very, just
of it.
sweeping quads and calves and triceps. He just had the frame that he developed over the years. But the point of that is that Aaron trained very, very hard. Keith Williams, who Flex originally was training when I went down there to meet with him, trained very, very hard. I trained Keith since 95 on multiple sports, as mentioned. And I said in a video I did one time, the real reason West Side barbell athletes are so strong, talking about Louis Simmons strength athletes. And that's because I believe that when you're surrounded, like in Venice, when you're surrounded by great athletes who are similarly focused and they're training very, very hard, very consistently, and around a great coach, like Flex in the case of bodybuilding or in Mark Bell in the case of powerlifting, I mean, you can't help but be successful because the competition is not necessarily the stage. You're competing every single day in the gym. You walk through Gold's Gym Venice, as you guys did so many times, and you see other people training hard. It brings you up to another level. And we know now when you look at some of the research by, some of the best exercise physiologists, PhDs, Dr. Stu Phillips at McMaster University in Canada, he recently, what we understand is that the training is the primary driver. And I'm a diet guy, I'm the vertical diet, and I'm pretty picky about what I eat and what I give to my clients. But the training's the cake, the stimulus, the constant and persistent over many years, pushing your body somewhere it hasn't been before, getting in there every single workout and trying to outperform the previous workout is the primary driver. Stu described that as the cake. And then the diet really and everything else is just kind of the icing or the cherry on top. And that you could, even with, what we might consider not the best diet, so long as you're getting sufficient calories and protein, probably 99% of your benefits can be realized without having to have some, like organic or, people, I think they hyper focus on things that aren't very meaningful.
They're not necessary is what you're saying.
They major in the minors. Whereas the training stimulus is really the driver. Yeah. And one thing I noticed is that you guys, I would go down to Venice. I would drive down there in the early 90s from Oregon just to watch the guys train. And what I recall, and I would even ask questions when I could. Paul DeMeo was down. He was always pretty generous about answering questions, and some of the guys that worked for Golds. What I always recall is almost every single one of them trained twice a day, 6 days a week. They would usually do body part splits. It's exactly the way Flex trained me in 2008 and 2009. It was a push-pull legs, day off. And it was a split. So push day was chest in the morning, shoulders and triceps at night. And then pull was back in the morning, biceps at night. And legs was quads in the morning, hamstrings at night. And I'm not talking about, big long workouts. Flex always believed you can train long or you can train hard, but you can't do both. And so we weren't, even on quads, we weren't in the gym for more than 45 minutes. Come back at night and do maybe 25 minutes for hamstrings. He had a pretty short rest period. He would say 90 seconds, but we would cheat and huff and puff and walk slow to the machine. It was about 2 minutes. It was about 2 minutes, not much longer. Now in powerlifting, you want 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes between sets. So one of the first things that I had to adapt to was the cardiovascular demands of Flex's workouts. Louis Simmons talked about the same thing at Westside. He said some of the big powerlifters would come in there and they just couldn't handle the volume that was necessary because they weren't cardiovascularly fit. So he would make them push sleds and do tons and tons of like lat pull downs just to keep, just to get them in better condition. That's how I mentioned when initially, because of the 2 minute rest periods and the range of motion, my leg press went from 14 plates on the side to 6 plates on the side really quickly, because sets 2, 3, and 4, you just see this huge decline in load that you could handle. But after about 30 days, you're back up to 14 plates.
Your body adapts
and
to
doing
it.
that range of motion with that volume, with those rest periods. It was a challenge. Flex remembers at times when I would get in there and I would, those little dogs that their trachea collapses when they make start doing that. Between some of these sets, I would do that, and Flex would have to come over. He's got an extensive background in martial arts, and he would have to talk because I'd be like looking all over the place, and Flex would see I wasn't focused, and so he would come over. He goes, look at me. He goes, breathe, calm down, exhale, because you take these little short breaths, so you're not letting all your carbon dioxide out. And I was looking around. I called it, what did I call that? That scary place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I would go into the gym and train with Flex. And at the time, I think I had, a lot of this is probably TMI, but I think I was also using clenbuterol. And that had made my heart race and made my breathing more shallow. And so I stopped that. Maybe it's a different conversation, but Flex was very conservative. He wanted me to we were focused on the training, and he just didn't pull the performance enhancing drug lever very hard. It was actually less than what I had historically been used to, because he didn't want it to, adversely affect my training. So it was an unbelievable experience, and he covered every single thing as I've touched on here, and we just lived it.
Yeah.
Fit Club started right here at the Strip, off Hacienda and Decatur. The energy, the grit, the place that set the standard for Vegas fitness. Then came Northwest, near Summerlin, sharing the Fit Club gym culture and vibes across Las Vegas. And the crown jewel, Henderson, a cutting-edge space designed for bodybuilders, competitors, and anyone chasing their best self. Fit Club Las Vegas, now with 3 locations.
I was going to
Just
say,
eat,
talk
sleep,
about
and-
the twice a day training.
No,
It was-
we talk about this a
all the
lot on the
time.
podcast. Is like no one trains twice a day anymore.
Yeah.
And I learned from you.
And
you
nobody
know,
benches
And
anymore.
you know what the
Yeah.
crazy thing is like I know like there's this big stigma. Like we watch your videos from Bad Olympia, which people still do because they're all over YouTube now. And you like sometimes look like you don't want to be there, right? People don't. I mean, usually it's at least 3 weeks out when
Yeah,
that's filmed,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you're
yeah, zero
tired. You were
carbs.
driving fucking
An hour. Yeah, yeah.
like there's a lot of story
Yeah.
behind what you go through. But the truth is you guys had the reputation of tearing up the gym. I remember
yeah.
when you guys were training, like you guys would get on that incline and do 5 plates.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, like we did those 200-pound dumbbells at
Yeah.
Metrics Gym. And I remember I went in there and even,
me.
yeah, but he did them. He had them in his
Yeah.
hands.
Yeah. No, we
And you
had
weren't
that.
a big, like you were huge, but not a big structured
No,
guy.
no,
Like someone
no.
like you could handle that
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
Because you're so, like you got a big frame, but
Yeah.
Flex is not a big
Now
frame.
you can start
but-
to see. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So it, to me, like people don't realize how hard you train, but the twice a day thing, why was that important to teach him? And you never did that before, like with the Aaron Madron days, right?
I just
Intensity?
Yeah, I just thought I knew what it did for me. I knew what it did for Chris. I knew what it did for the people that came before me, Mike Christian and Gary Stridham and all those guys. And it was just a way, I mean, you learn from the people who came before you back then, especially in Go's Gym. You learn from those guys. So it was just like the only way. And I always felt that it's not how much food you eat, it's how much you train that you have to deliver that food. You don't just set a food marker and then you don't train enough to burn that off. So I always thought that your training drives your food. So you have to, if you're going to eat more food, you have to train more. And I just felt that, like I always had like this mind of like a tutor. Instead of being in a class of 30, you have a tutor. So it's one-on-one. So you have to be able to give if you gave that muscle group, just that one-on-one time instead of doing a full workout or a half workout in one session, it's not going to get as much, attention. So I just, even we would do a lot of unilateral movements, single leg, leg extension, single leg curls and stuff like that. But I was just weird. I had this analogy, and it came more towards my mid and end of my career, even at 20s. Stan coined it like 20s to change your life, but it's like it challenges your heart, challenges your cardio. It takes and I always understood it takes more strength to move, 315 20 times than it does freaking 600 once. That muscle has to be in better shape. It has to be more conditioned and stronger. So I just like, I remember before we would always go super strong. And like you said, my body's not built for it. Even Chris's bone structure is a little bit stronger, bigger than mine. Even, Rico's a little bone structure. So it would just crush my weight because back then my legs were about 32 and my waist was right around at 28. So all that just went directly to my spine. And I just one day it's like, man, I'm just going to, instead of doing 6 plates, I'm going to drop it and just do 20. And like my lungs were on fire. And the other thing is my brain was telling me stop because it knew it was in for. So I'm like, okay, that's a challenge. So I can't listen to that. So I just felt that it worked for me. And then again, like I said, I had that analogy of speed skaters and cyclists and guys in the gym. And like, it was believed you couldn't do a lot of reps to put on muscle. But I'm like, how is it these guys do this every day, and put on muscle? And another thing, it said to Stan, what was the difference? I don't I don't remember ever talking about micros and minerals back in my time. We didn't know that crap. You know, it was more about just getting in the gym and training freaking crazy hard and being competitive. And like you said, I mean, it was competitive back in Gold's Gym. I mean, me, Rico, and Chris, we always felt that we were the strongest crew. And if anybody walked through the door and we checked them out, it's like, man, we need to show them. You know, I remember the first time Paul Dillette walked through the door and he had just a tank top on always and baggy pants. Like, ain't no way he got legs. And then one day he came in, I was like, oh my God, this dude got legs and calves and everything.
Too, yeah.
Oh, it was crazy. But that was just, it was just my logic. And I felt that it worked. And like I said, it was really difficult with Stan because I knew he was educated. I'm like, what if he just goes against, like, dude, you don't know what the F you're talking about. You know, I went to school for this stuff.
Funny thing about that is subsequent to training with Flex, I went back to Seattle and I had a different coach to help my diet for the next show. And I just totally took a shit. He ketoed me and I on 50 grams of carbs and I just crashed. But Flex touched on some things that we now know, that he knew then, but we now have proven, and that's the rep range. You can get equivalent hypertrophy results from anywhere between 5 and 30 reps, so long as the effort or the proximity to failure is sufficient. There's no difference. But one of the things I think that I benefited from, we also, there's a term for EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, such that when you train super hard, you have an elevated metabolism for a period of time afterwards. One of the things that I always had trouble with since I was a skinny kid with skinny legs coming up in bodybuilding is when I started doing cardio, not an indictment of cardio, but my physique, every time I would walk on a treadmill, my legs would I would spend all this time in the off season trying to build these quads, and then my legs would just narrow out right before the show. So Flex didn't want me to do any cardio. He had Keith doing cardio. Keith had quads to spare. Some people do. But he didn't want me doing any cardio for that reason. And so a lot of the volume that we did served as my energy expenditure. I was burning an enormous amount of calories and I wasn't competing with, and I know this kind of gets into this discussion over whether or not, cardio hurts hypertrophy. Yeah. And at the extreme ends, of course. But I'm not suggesting that it's counterproductive, but I was at the extreme end. I was the kind of body, a physique that had a hard time maintaining leg mass, dieting for a bodybuilding show. And so the volume that we did served two purposes for me. It kept my mass, it kept my quad size fuller than it had ever been historically. And by historically, I mean 1 year prior to winning my pro card training with Flex, I won the Emerald Cup up in Seattle. Brad Craig's show.
Craig,
sure.
Yeah.
And I weighed 222 pounds, 224 pounds. I was 252 on stage 1 year later with Flex. And that's not, that discussion isn't about how much muscle I gained, because I was 270 before dieting for both of those shows.
Same.
I'd already been competing for 20 plus years. And I was powerlifting in the off season. So I was 270 when I did my prep for the Emerald Cup. I ended up at 224, 222. 270 when I started working with Flex, probably a little heavier because he really loaded me with calories because he said he needed something to work with because he knew he was going to throw a ton of volume at me. So he wanted me up, 5,000+ calories. But I ended up at 252 in really similar condition, but holding on to much more mass as a result of the way that we trained, because he didn't have me do all the cardio.
You remember also, I always feel like when a body gets in really great harmony, you start burning more calories and you have to start throwing food in there. Yeah. And it just causes your caloric intake to scream. And I remember seeing them lose a little bit size and okay, we got to increase the carbs. And it got to the point where I forgot how much carbs he was eating, but it was a crazy amount.
Almost 500 grams.
And his body was still screaming so you want to wake up in the morning, look good, and go to bed looking even better. And when you see that starts to get fired, if you don't throw food in there, that's where you're going to burn calories and get them off. And that was just funny to just continuously throw carbs in there. And it was just, it's almost like putting more logs in the fire. It just gets hotter. and you got to just keep getting to the point where then you got to start like throwing fats in there to slow down everything.
more
you know,
red
like
meat
that.
and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
You mentioned people don't bench press anymore. Why?
I don't know. I don't get it. And you know, I used to get these comments like when Instagram first came out, because I benched like this and we let the bar come down to our chin. And everybody were like, "Oh, you're gonna screw your shoulders up? That's just a shoulder workout." And I'm like, "Why didn't it give Arnold and them?" But they all did that. And you even see Chris and Rico, they would stick their chin out to meet it and everything. I would bring my neck back and bring it to my neck and everything. It builds upper chest. But you remember Arnold and all those guys had enormous upper chests. You know, a lot of people have a lot of mid and lower chest, but I don't know. But you know what, Jay? I mean, I know technology's changed. I know equipment's changed tremendously, right? And I know we know a lot more about diet and everything, but I still don't think it outdoes the hard work that we put in the gym, and we loved it. I mean, Stan talked about it, but I would have a great workout and I would be mentally messed up going like, how am I going to outdo that workout tomorrow? And I'd sleep and dream about it, and I'd come and have a better workout. I'm like, how am I going to do better? And each time, but it was like a psycho type of, but I just enjoyed it, man.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, Rico and Chris talked about it a lot. I was just like different mentally. I believe like I wanted to stay fully and immersed in a workout. So I wouldn't talk, I wouldn't look around at things, and I would single myself out. So when my set was done, because they would talk a little bit, I would walk away from them because I just want to stay in that zone. So I'm always looking down or humdrum or something like that. But I just knew that, like in this hellish environment, I'm creating like a diamond. I'd always say a diamond is in the worst hot, you know, crazy environment possible. But look what comes out of it. And I knew if I ever put my head up and like deal with like real society, like going to the movies or playing video games, I couldn't live in both worlds. I couldn't do it. I had to just stay in hell until it was done with. And then I would tell myself, hey man, when this is over, I don't care what time you want a pizza, you get a pizza, but stay in this until then. And I thrive better in that type of environment.
Yeah.
Why do you think people don't bench press?
Well, we've discovered that almost any kind of bench press exercise, whether it's a free weight or a machine, can have equivalent hypertrophy results, say just on the pecs. Mm-hmm. And that's fine and all. But you take three lifters who bench press. One will get big shoulders, one will get big triceps, one will get a big chest. And you don't know who you are going in until you've done the work. Flex fixed what I was underdeveloped on after the fact, but I'd already packed on. You know, again, my first bodybuilding show, I was 154 pounds. I was in the lightweight under 160s class, and I was 20 years old.
You're not short.
No, I was 6 foot 154 in my first bodybuilding show.
It's like an MMA fighter nowadays.
But back then, we didn't have Mankini class, so you had one option as a 6 foot guy. You needed to be 250.
Bodybuilding, yeah.
It was bodybuilding. That's it. And
I say this all the time.
yeah,
You call it Mankini?
yeah. And to be honest with you, I probably would have been a Mankini competitor if it existed at the time, because that was what my physique looked like.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was the daughter of the owner of Soloflex, was a high school friend of mine, and I wanted to be a Soloflex model. That was what I had, on the refrigerator. I didn't have bodybuilders, but when I got to college and there's magazines, they didn't have that. So that's what I pursued. You had to pack on massive amounts of muscle. And putting the whole body under load, squats, deadlifts, bench press, you kind of see what develops. And then you start working on those things. But Flex said something else that's really important. And a lot of the research today talks about what happens physiologically. And that's, as mentioned, whether you're doing a seated bench press or a machine or a cable fly, or you're doing a free weight bench press, you get equivalent hypertrophy results. But a lot of that is driven psychologically. And what Flex described is what, for 24 to 48 hours before a leg day, especially training with Flex, I would have this overwhelming stress and I couldn't understand why. And then I realized, oh shit, tomorrow's leg day. And it was kind of
I had that every day. I planned my workouts the day
Yeah.
before. I knew exactly like
what you were going to
I
put
walked through.
yourself through.
I knew
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, I'm going to start with this piece of equipment to this. And if someone was sitting on that piece, it would mess my whole plan.
100%.
You know?
So what we know now is that your ability to perform in that particular session, which is, again, the most important, that stimulus is the most important driver of progress. Your ability to perform in that session depends on a lot of things. How well did you sleep? You know, what's your diet like? Outside stress, you know, what have you. Because your ability to get all of the repetitions plus one more is driven by what we call your perceived level of exertion. It's a feedback loop neurologically. And that's why things such as drinking a carb drink before a workout or just swishing it around and spitting it out provides an equivalent result, because the brain is what's the perception. So I don't want to go in there hungry. And I don't want to go in there thinking about the volume of work. I want to think about the intensity of the work. Right? Or I'm going to save myself for reps, which is another reason why I think that the splits worked so well, because I could pour everything I had into this workout. So Dorian talked about doing the 2 top sets of 2 exercises because he would give it 100%. He didn't have anything left for a third set. I would train athletes and they would be I would be squatting with them, and I'm like, do you have enough energy to do leg extensions? And they would look at me and be like, yeah. And I'm like, then do another set of squats. And that was, it's bro science. It's a meathead powerlifter's philosophy, but you're talking about somebody who hasn't been developed yet, somebody who has a lot of muscle left to gain. And so it's that perceived level of exertion that I focus on. As Flex talked about, everything to me, it was all focused on, like you said, just that one workout. You would plan it all out ahead of time. You would think it through in your brain, and you would go in there and you would have this just extraordinary session. Afterwards, you would kind of be in this state of euphoria. You could sit there and drink your post-workout drink and you just completely annihilated yourself. But you would have this unbelievable sense of relaxation. It would be
that you gave everything.
Yeah, you gave it all. And Flex said that many times. He's like, I just want to know that that there's nothing more you could have done, because you're not in control of your genetics and the judges and whatever else. And if they prefer a bigger physique or a more aesthetically pleasing body or whatever, you're not in control of that. You can only do so much with your physique. But if you get up there knowing that you gave it everything you had, then that's what matters. And a lot of that's psychological.
Let me ask you, Flex. So you retired. What year did you stop? From your main career?
It was 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, 2002.
So when he came to you, did you ever realize that you would be able to spill the knowledge off? Like you weren't voluntarily going seeking clients at that time. I know you train people now. Like you do a lot of training. Like, I mean, you even helped Andrew Jacked at one point.
He didn't admit that on your show, though. Did he? No, he didn't. Yeah, I remember watching.
But I remember,
wow.
you kind of introduced him
to
the world, and you were kind of mentoring him. But to go back, did you ever, and I'm asking you because this is an experience that I have, is like you don't realize how much knowledge you have until someone starts asking you the questions and it just comes out. Like it's just automatic, like the twice a day training and the rep schemes, and like you're talking about all these things that are coming out.
Yeah.
Like, did you start to realize, like, because I felt like watching the videos of you, and I watched as a fan, and I watched you train, but you had Charles Glass and you had your training partners, so it's like I felt like it was just routine, right? I don't know if you were leading or who was the leader of it. I don't know if it was Rico or...
I would probably exercise wise, it would be me, but the true, and I've always said this, leader of our pack was Rico. I mean, I led because I was more visible. I was more a wow factor. I turned pro more, but as far as maturity and everything else, it was 100% Rico.
So he kind of structured everything. So, but you're realizing your potential to be a mentor. It probably came out and probably was. I mean, it came out by kind of just helping people. And like you said, it's just and I think we take it for granted because we lived it and it is such quick knowledge that we take it for granted, but there's a lot of people out there that don't have that knowledge and haven't lived it. And I'll say this other thing, Jay. I think a lot of people feel that they can be bodybuilders, right?
we're the only sport in the world that you can actually just walk on stage and compete. Football, you got to make that team, right? Basketball, you got to make that team. Bodybuilding, you can just train and then walk onto a show. So a lot of people feel that our sport is meant for them, but it isn't meant for them. Even though you can compete on a certain level, doesn't mean that it's meant for you. So other sports, because they're different, you got to be a great player to be on a college team. You got to be a great player to even be on a high school team. So I feel that, you know, a lot of people will come into our sport and they'll have expectations. And even now, I'm sure you get it. This generation, their first question's about drugs. And I'm like, dude, you're not a bodybuilder, man. You're a drug addict. I mean, remember we went to seminars and it was about nutrition and training and everything. But I think because our sport, you know, allows anyone to be able to compete, people have a misconception that our sport is meant for them. And then when they start competing at a certain level and getting smashed by everybody, they kind of then possibly either this quit or they get really, really hateful toward our sport. And then are turn against it. Oh, it's just this, it's just that. But, and another thing, I've said this to you before, is I feel that our sport is the birth of all other sports. You don't got to go play basketball. You don't got to swim. You got to run track. You don't got to dance, but even acting. But they all have to come into our world to better themselves. So it's really interesting that why our sport and why bodybuilding isn't a bigger sport, but it's a very niche sport. And, you know, I just truly think that if we had more proper marketing and stuff like, how could we not be? Listen, we walked around as those little He-Man characters. We were that in real life. Yeah. But people will look at us and like, oh, but they'd have the kid playing with the same doll. I mean, so how is that possible that they accepted us as cartoons and everything? I remember Mum-Ra, you know, and He-Man and all that stuff, but we walked around living that real life and we wasn't accepted. So I think it's just it's like you can walk around in life and have a certain perception and you put on glasses like, oh my God, I was looking at everything wrong. So I really think if our sport was like just managed differently, I mean, I'm not sure, but how many times were you actually put in the news here that you won the Olympia?
No, I had to show up to do it, you know, to get notoriety on it.
We had to set it up.
I mean, but you got high schools being mentioned in a news magazine.
I still think pro bodybuilders are the most valuable influencers in the world. I'm talking across the board.
Yeah.
If LeBron James dunks on somebody and he's fouled, what does he do? He flexes his bicep.
Oh, man.
If a football player scores a touchdown,
yes,
double bicep.
Yes,
UFC
or crab pose,
Look at the new guy, the kid from Dallas. Why am I forgetting his name? Every time he dunks, he does the most muscular.
Yeah.
And it's not impressive because he's 180.
Every boxer, when they weigh in, they're doing a front double bicep.
Yes.
Usain Bolt's, I mean, but we don't like, you know, we don't win a show and go, you know.
You know what's interesting about what Plex said, and of course I've lived through it for almost 40 years myself, is that it used to be competitive. You know, bodybuilders hated powerlifters, hated CrossFitters, hated, you know, everybody was.
Yeah.
And now you go to an expo, and we're all brothers in iron, brothers and sisters in iron. All of us understand, and you have respect for somebody who can perform. You're like, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's just chin-ups, but we understand squat, bench, deadlift. That's why I think the geared powerlifting, ones where you wear those suits, fell out of favor because nobody gets it. Every high school kid in the country now understands what a 225 bench is. You know, it's in the combines at the NFL. Everybody gets that, but they don't understand a 600-pound triple ply open back. Nobody gets that, right? That's weird. What is that? But everybody now, when I see them all together, the strong men, women, you know, even the fitness competitors. I worked with Nadia Wyatt, who was third in the Olympia and second in the Arnold Classic. She was a power lifter, and she wanted to lift heavy weights going into the Miss Olympia, even though she's, you know, a physique girl. We were lifting hard, heavy weights, and if you watch each other and we compare, and that's great performance. Even people who don't compete, you see them on social media, and they're doing a variation of some exercise that's really not, you don't get it. And you'll scroll through till you find them doing a basic. How strong is this person? Because that's in comparison to, and now of course powerlifting is. I was just thinking about this on the way here. Bodybuilding. There's some incredible bodybuilders. Your era, before, Lee Haney, subsequent to, currently, and there's all this talk about which is the best, and you guys could take somebody from today and put them on the stage from
Next to Dorian Yates.
Next to Dorian Yates in the 90s. And everybody has a different opinion as to who would win that thing. In powerlifting, the loads that people are moving today is ridiculous.
I just saw some guy broke some record. He's not that big.
Inbrick
Yeah,
is a
blonde
275
guy.
or
Yeah.
totaled 2,700 pounds.
Yeah.
Squatting a grand,
Yeah.
deadlifting a grand,
Yeah.
benching over 600. Raw.
Yeah.
It's just, and the women, even in the IPF, the drug-tested natural women, squatting over 500 pounds. It's phenomenal what's happening in the strength world right now. It is definitely different than, it's measurably, objectively better if that's what you're measuring is the weightlifting.
When do you guys think that performance enhancers became like the focal point? Because a performance enhancer is supposed to enhance your performance. It's not supposed to be the base. Where years ago, guys would talk about nutrition, training, sleep, and drugs is like it was barely talked about.
I never asked you.
Now it's the first thing.
Yeah, we never sat around. Hey, what's your concoction?
No.
I try to tell people that, and they're like blown away by.
Yeah.
You're a liar.
Yeah.
No, because we didn't. It wasn't about that.
No. I always looked at it as, if you're a Ferrari, you're a Ferrari, and then you put rims on it and an engine, but you can't take a kit car and make it into that. And like I said, it was about just hard training, fellowship every day, competing against each other. And then we added the rims to it, later on, where I'm not really sure. I think towards the end of my career and doing seminars, when people started just popping up with the open question about drugs.
I think when the magazines died. Is
And
when
They kind of controlled it, right?
because not at control, but we weren't in our contracts. We weren't allowed to
discuss that.
They kept it
I
hidden.
mean, we were endorsing supplements a
Yeah.
lot of the times,
Yeah.
and we kind of had but it was just I don't know. It's hard to explain. I don't know about you, but the protocol was always it really didn't change much because.
No.
I look at you as a genetic. Everyone always talks about the greatest genetics of all time. We all argue it, but. Your physique had the best flow, and obviously that's the reason you probably picked him. I wanted to ask you why, out of all the guys you picked, Flex Wheeler to mentor you. How?
Like I said, I've been
why?
back and forth to Venice as a young
so
lifter
you
and
watched
looked at the
him.
magazines, watched the videos, and obviously you can't but be so impressed. And it wasn't just how incredible the physique was; it was those hard training sessions with Cormier and that I used to watch that I just thought was compelling. So it was.
But I always had to be a full hands-on trainer. I can't do the distant training too well. I got to monitor how hard they're training because of that I can then increase or decrease food. So I had to be hands-on. I had to be there when they train. A lot of times after we train, we would go and eat. I remember Stan talking about his teeth were loose because all we ate was steak. It was just steak
4 pounds of steak a day.
But
sirloin,
I'm not one of those good online guys because you're looking at photos, even though Chad did it, but it's just different. I can't do that. I need to know that they're training.
output.
Yeah. Because
That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I won't say certain athletes, but I know Stan can. But I know it was an athlete I was training, and I just didn't feel he was training hard, even though he was crazy strong. So I grabbed Stan, Stan, come in, you mind coming in training? And Stan's training, he's doing his set, and it's this guy's set time, and Stan's staring at him
And mind you, I'm 50 years old at the time.
yeah, and Stan's staring at him man, you got to go, you got to train. And he's like, no, wait a minute, and I'm like. You get what I'm saying? He goes, yes, the guy and you guys have talked about the person before, and it's kind of known now that he just didn't train hard. He is incredibly genetically gifted and done really well now, and it's even talked that it was because of his trainer that things train, and unfortunately things went bad now, but I have to just be one of those hands-on guys. Your training is what demands the amount of food you eat. If not, you get fat training hard. And you see it all the time. You go in a gym. I remember in Go's gyms, and you too. There were certain people that came in there every day. They never changed.
Flex talked about being book smart. He talks about me. I studied this all my life, but Flex was street smart. Grew up in Fresno, in the hood. You gotta watch people's eyes. You got to look over your shoulder. You can't expose yourself. But that kind of thing made him really good at observing people and being able to read them and watch their eyes and their mannerisms and stuff. And that's what Flex would do as a trainer with me. He would count everything. Flex would count every single rep. He would time the rest period. He'd be watching the clock, or have his
time to go. Yeah.
Time the rest period, and it's time to go. Let's go. It's nice. Come on, let's go. And then we, like I said, we'd take another 30 seconds to get to the machine. He would call us out on that. Then we would pose every day. He would weigh every single day, and we would pose every single day. And Flex didn't know when I told him this conversation that came up about my teeth being loose. I was eating 4 pounds of steak every day, cooked on a Foreman grill, so it was tough as nails.
Or Sizzler, which isn't too much better.
It was like freaking leather. After a while, my teeth started hurting, jaw started hurting. So I switched, and Keith knew because he and I were eating together, and I was switched to white fish and some chicken breast because it was softer. And in like 3 days, I was in, and we were posing, and Flex like, something's wrong, something's off, what's going on? And Keith was like, and Flex saw Keith looking away and immediately knew. He's like, okay, what's going on? And that's when I told him. I said, my teeth are loose. And he's like, you can go to a butcher and grind that shit. Yeah. He goes, get back on the stage.
Yeah.
But he noticed an actual difference because his eyes, Flex would pose. It's just incredible.
You just have that type of body, yeah.
Yeah.
Some people need that.
Steak.
I didn't diet on steak. I couldn't,
Really?
Yeah, I got leaner on fish,
Really?
But I was a big carb eater too. Right?
Okay.
But I was a huge volume guy.
Yeah.
I didn't train as heavy as Stan, but
The point there is that he saw a difference because he watched and he notices these things. And he would always tell me when we were posing, he says, you're looking for, even with the exhale, you breathe out. he would make you go through all these, when you were posing, and he would be looking for like one little thing. Did that shadow get an inch longer or half an inch longer? Did you see one more little flicker, in an intercostal or something? And he would see that, and that's what he would be looking for. Everything else, as we progressed through to the show, he would be making sure that everything was going as planned. Or if you started to look potentially smaller or flatter. And we had that experience with an athlete we worked with together that was competing for the Olympia. And he was wearing like these bodysuits and to try and sweat a lot during training because he had this perception that if you sweat, you were burning fat, and there's nothing could be further from the truth. And he started, so he was posing after the workouts, and eventually Flex noticed it. He's like, "Look, you're getting flat. You look terrible." And his wife was there with him cooking all of his food, and I was doing the diet, and Flex was doing the training, and we got together for lunch. He said, we need to talk to you and your wife together. And Flex, he knew something was going on. So he brought everybody to the table to intervene. And he's like, okay, what's going on? And it turns out I had him on a reasonably high sodium intake because of how much he was sweating, and he wanted to wear the sweatsuit. And I told him he shouldn't wear the sweatsuit. But it was hot. It was summer. And his wife had pulled the salt out. So he was exhausted. And he was flat as could be. And Flex noticed he wasn't even sweating anymore at some point. And so it's that kind of observation. And Flex, within 2 days, Flex had everybody at the table, and he's like, okay, something's going on here. And that's a coach that cares. It's a coach that's watching and observing. And we made the change, and it wasn't 48 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours later. Veins popping. He was in there posing. It just looked incredible again. And that was, this could have potentially been a huge.
Why did you work with him and then you went to some other guy and lost all the weight? Can I ask that? Because you left that part out. You're sitting here praising him.
I wasn't even sure if I was going to compete again, to be honest with you. I got my pro card. I did a pro show with Flex, and everything went great.
I was going to ask that.
And then I went back home.
Who is
when
it?
When I trained with Flex, I went down to San Jose and I trained with him, and then went back home to Seattle, and I had a gym up there, and I was powerlifting as well. You know, I'd alternate between powerlifting and bodybuilding, and so I just decided to try some other diet. Flex and I obviously would keep talking and friends and all this stuff, but I was just kind of doing my own thing, you know, and and the training changed as well. I was doing more squats, benches, and deadlifts, and my physique
Eating peanuts
suffered.
and
Eating a high fat, low carb
Keto diet. Doesn't
Yeah.
work for someone like you.
And I was weak. I even shot a video here in Vegas. Who was the pro that was like the youngest IFBB pro at the time? Remember him? He was the youngest IFBB
Cody
pro.
Montgomery.
Cody
years ago.
Montgomery.
He was 20 when
I
he
can't
won the
remember.
USA's
This
and
was
15.
This might have been before Cody. It was 15 years ago or so. But they had the strongest and the youngest, I think, was what it was. And we were training at the gym that you used to train at there. Out was that. It
Gold's
shut down.
Gym?
It
Gold's
was
Gym?
Gold's.
Yeah, it was Gold's
Flamingo
Gym.
Sand Hill.
Flamingo
Yeah,
Sand.
yeah.
Yep,
it was
got that
Gold's
one.
Gym.
Great spot, but I was weak. I was weak, and that's one of the metrics I focus on when I prep people for the show. That's a pretty good indicator that you're losing muscle. I would rather compromise a little bit of volume as you get down into the last 4, weeks to the show. That's why we don't do, like shaping or pumping or toning exercises. We still keep some hardcore, close to failure movements in there. And by strong, I don't mean single rep max. I mean, are you moving reasonably close to the same weight for 5 reps or 10 reps or 15 reps, wherever your rep range was? Are you still moving reasonably close to the same weight? You might have to take a little longer rest, and you might not have 3 or 4 of those in you. You might only have 2 throughout the workout. But if I see a significant decline in strength,
Muscle's gone.
then I know that we're losing muscle.
Yeah. Were you like that? I mean, we gauged that going into the show, like the last week. If we can move pretty close to what our maximum was before, muscle's still there.
Max, again, not being a single rep max.
Remember, I always had Chris Aceto coaching me from day one. So for me, like he kind of had, he was an exercise science. I mean, I think he was first in his class actually in Connecticut. He went to school with Jeff King. I think.
Yeah, and worked with Neil for a while.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and he's a guy that's on instinct also. So like book stuff, he used to tell me, okay, whatever's opposite of the book, we need to do with you. That's what he used to tell me. So like, everyone's on low carbs. You need to just be on high carbs. So I think that I had a good set of eyes and he lived close to me, right? I drove up there, like you said, every week I drove to see him. So I was able to be recognized in that sense. But I never lost the strength like that.
Yeah.
Even though hard I died on 50 carbs a day, and then I would just, load up every 3rd day or whatever.
Yeah.
But I stayed on super high protein, which is conversion anyway. I mean, I was eating 450 a day or something.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, you are known for training a lot of people that are not bodybuilders, whether they're fighters or strongmen. How did that come about? How did these
diet.
world-renowned people
Yeah, I cut my teeth at the University of Oregon with track and football players. The University of Oregon football team, I trained a lot of those guys. Their 95 Rose Bowl season, and track athletes. And the University of Oregon was Tracktown USA, Olympic trials, Nike, Phil Knight. So I got a lot of early exposure with athletes on that, and even some distance athletes, some marathoners at the time. And so it was kind of, and I was a soccer player and a wrestler, so it was kind of second hand to me. Now, my passion was bodybuilding and powerlifting. But as
This guy got a scholarship to college playing
play
soccer.
of all things, I was
So
too
think
small.
of that. I mean, what he looks like, and
It was
a scholarship.
135, 140 pounds.
It
I was-
explains
I
your
was small.
metabolism, though, to be honest.
It's ridiculous.
That's what causes
I still-
sports cause that.
I still have to eat a ton of food just to maintain my weight, or I would lose weight pretty fast. I've been that way since I was a kid. But just I think through a lot of the exposure, and again thanks to Flex Wheelers, I never would have had a 10-page layout in muscular development if it weren't for Flex. A 10-page layout in Flex magazine and written for them for a couple of years if it weren't for Flex. it wasn't just the pro card; it was all the other relationships that were created as a result of that. And
Who are some of the notable people that you've got ready for events?
well, I started, through Mark Bell and his popularity. I was just talking generally speaking about how social media allowed me to have a platform. Being on Shark Tank didn't hurt. That was in 10 million homes, and it was replayed on cable affiliates for still. Like last year for 10 years now almost. So I got a lot of exposure, and I was able to then, do a lot of podcasts and talk about, just nutrition in general. It was probably 10 years ago I did a seminar in Iceland with Hafthor Bjornsson. That's got like 7 million views now, and it's over 2 hours, the entire vertical diet. I remember my wife saying to me when I got home and it aired, she's like, who's going to buy your ebook now that you just put the whole thing out on the internet for free? And in fact, just the opposite happened. And I put out the vertical diet ebook, version 1. It's now in version 4. I've continued to upgrade it and give the subsequent versions for free to anybody who bought a previous version, because things change. More people ask questions. I expanded. It's 250 pages now. And I've added a lot of good science and research and references to peer-reviewed stuff and videos and articles that are relative to all the stuff in there. But I put that out for $100, which at the time, an ebook, $100, is unheard of 10 years ago. And subsequently sold over 3,000 copies. Do the math.
So back to the question, some of the athletes you work with.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like John Jones.
30,000 copies.
Yeah. Oh.
I've sold 30,000 copies of that ebook in the last 9 years. 30,000 copies at $100 a pop. That's $3 million that I just off the ebook. And I have a meal prep company and do online coaching, etc. So social media allowed me to monetize bodybuilding, powerlifting, personal training in a way that had never for 20 plus years previously. I worked at gyms, owned gyms, etc. Never made anywhere near that kind of income as a result of that exposure. And that exposure allowed me then to work with Hafthor Bjornsson, Brian Shaw, Mitchell Hooper, a host of other top strongmen. I spent better part of a year going back and forth to New Mexico training John Jones in his camp with his coaches. I would fly down there on Monday and come home on Friday nights and spend the whole week working with him on his strength and conditioning. He's got a whole team of other people that help him with strength, and I was mainly nutrition. And I was kind of Uncle Stan. I kind of orchestrated and coordinated John's day-to-day. But he's got, I'm not pretending like I was a critical factor in that camp. It's more about what I learned than he learned, probably, and I say that about all my athletes. NFL ball players, Lane Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles has been someone that I've worked with for a long time now. I was able to help Stone Cold Steve Austin with his nutrition some years ago. Even Mike O'Hearn at one point, we've been friends over the years, gave me the reins and said, here, he says, do my diet. And he goes, help me with this next.
He's avoiding us. He won't come on the podcast.
He will. He 100% will.
Did you feed him duck eggs? Or?
I didn't feed him duck eggs.
Okay.
Yeah. And even just a couple of years ago, I was doing nutrition for Kennedy Blades, who's a silver medalist in the Olympics, wrestler who went to Iowa State Hawkeyes and now is wrestling professionally. And when I say professional wrestling, I don't mean WWE. I mean actual wrestling. And so I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of.
For our people that haven't followed the vertical diet, can you give just kind of an like a shortcut?
Yeah, briefly, and it's on both ends of the spectrum. What I noticed, even as early back as the early 90s when I was training women for competition, is that a lot of them would be over-restrictive, and they would end up suffering from the female triad, a cessation of the menstrual period, what they call amenorrhea, and low iron, anemia, and just chronic calorie restriction resulting in what we see now. We see hypothyroidism and hair loss and all those things. And I was seeing that in the early 90s, but it was kind of isolated to our little group of fringe bodybuilders at the time. And then when it became mainstream and housewives started following the diets of these bikini girls who were in the best shape of their life on stage, they started suffering all the side effects without all the benefits because they weren't using the Anavar and the thyroid medication, et cetera, et cetera. And so I talked about things like over-restriction, chronic calorie restriction. Generally speaking, these guru diets, you guys are familiar with them over the years, was, it was egg whites, protein powder, broccoli, maybe a scoop of almond butter. Yeah, it's pretty much the foundation of the typical bikini diet. Yeah, they would not eat the egg yolk, where all the choline and biotin is for skin, hair, and nails. They would not eat red meat, where the iron is, and they would not eat dairy. They would actually cut out dairy, which we know has a whole host of benefits in addition to the calcium. They would cut out fruit, which we know can be very helpful as well. And they would eliminate sodium for weeks, if not months, while they were training, or at least reduce it to a point where it was actually hindering performance. So the vertical diet was intended to introduce more variety and talk about, the macronutrients instead of just macros. It would talk about the micronutrients instead of just macros. People knew calories, kind of in terms of the energy balance equation. If you want to gain weight, you got to be in calorie surplus. You want to lose weight, you got to be in calorie deficit. They were doing that, but I think that the women in particular were suffering from all those side effects as a result of over-restriction. And then on the weight gain side, as we all recall, there was the dirty bulking. And I went through...
I don't know what that is.
I went through some phases of dirty bulking in the early 90s. I remember I was 140 pounds when I got to college. My first show in 88 was, I was 164. I was almost 300 pounds by 97. And that was a lot of dirty bulking. And I was...
What's dirty bulk? Give me an example.
That's when people just...
Flex knows. He's laughing.
Well, way too many calories to begin with, but also just loading up on things like pizza, pasta, pancakes, and... fettuccine Alfredos. And
I dirty bulk for 46 years.
He's on a resurgence. He's lost how much?
50 pounds.
Oh, congratulations!
In the
you
last
got to feel
year.
better too.
Amazing. Like I told you, I removed diet soda, gone.
Yeah.
And I just drink tea, coffee, water, and like some aminos here and there. All I eat is either chicken, steak, potatoes, rice, vegetables, and fruit.
Yeah, stay away from that fast food.
Want
and go
nothing
a long
else.
way.
I don't even like going out to eat.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid they're going to have, I've realized I have a issue with dairy, butter, and any of that. I'm afraid if there's a tiny little bit on it, I'm keeled over in pain now.
I had cottage cheese this morning, and I had whole eggs this morning.
Yeah.
How am I doing?
You're doing great. I mean, protein's kind of the foundation, and there's a good variety.
I had egg whites too.
Dairy has some independent effects for both BMI and performance. It's a dairy effect, and it's
I dieted on cottage cheese.
Assuming that you can handle the lactose. But the vertical diet was intended to help people on both ends of the spectrum, because I bodybuilded, I dieted down to single-digit body fat, and I experienced some of the same issues. And I bulked up and powerlifted, and I was over 300 pounds. And so I experienced some of the metabolic syndrome issues with the elevated blood pressure and lipids and insulin resistance, all the things that occur when you get just too fat too quick. And I thought that, and I think a lot of us thought at the time that the more weight you gained, more scale weight you gained, you'd be able to gain more muscle. But now we realize that there's a limit to that, and even a tiny surplus, maybe 200-300 calories surplus, is sufficient to maximize muscle growth. Part of my problem is that as I initially increased calories, my metabolism would increase, and so I wasn't necessarily in a surplus. I had to keep eating more and more and more and more just to maintain my weight. And I had a hard time holding on to that weight. And so that's another thing that vertical diet did. In addition to addressing the deficits and the surpluses, it talked about how to, like for somebody like Lane Johnson, he gets fined if he's too light. They want him north of 320, 330, and he was having a hard time getting out of the teens. He was 312 or so when I met him, and he said, I really need to gain weight. And so it was kind of helping people pick and eat the kinds of foods that were easier to consume. This is for people who are trying to push a lot of calories to do things like bodybuilding 2-a-days or 2-a-day football or just athletes in general. Mm-hmm. And so I designed his diet so that he could eat a lot of food without having an enormous amount of stress on the stomach or health compromised. And so we still wanted to control blood pressure, still wanted to control lipids, and be able to easily digest that quicker and be hungry again sooner so he could consume more food again. And part of that was using what we refer to as a low FODMAP menu, fermentable oligodimonosaccharides and polyols. There's a lot of foods that, and this isn't a good food, bad food conversation, this is in quantity. It can be difficult to digest things like maybe a lot of garlic or onions or raw broccoli, foods that would accumulate. And this became important for women as they were dieting for a show. They don't want bulk.
Distension, yeah.
They don't want distension in their abdominal, and so they intentionally reduce fibers during that time. And there's certain fibers that create more gas than others and might cause things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and the like. So the vertical diet intended to discuss diet in general pretty specifically for all those different categories of people. That's kind of how it was.
So you require blood work around that?
I do. I don't know if it's necessarily diet related. There's obviously blood work's going to show you if you've got high lipids, and diet's going to affect that. If you've got high ApoB or LDLC, that can increase cardiovascular disease risk, and so saturated fats. When I work with a Hafthor Bjornsson or a Mitchell Hooper, these guys are already 400, Mitchell, in the low 300s, 330, Brian Shaw, 400 pounds. You really got to be careful about, blood pressure, fatty liver, NAFLD, and lipids, because they're already pushing their body to the limit. And last thing you want to do is start to compromise their health with metabolic syndrome. And so the diet can help with that. Obviously, we focus on blood pressure first, but in terms of long-term health, we want to focus on cardiovascular disease. And a lot of these guys historically would just eat, pizzas and ice cream, really high cholesterol, high saturated fat diets that would drive their cholesterol through the roof. And the longer that stays elevated, the higher that stays elevated for longer, the more accumulation of plaque in the arteries that you have. And then someday you wake up 20 years later and realize that's not reversible.
You think it's reversible?
It's not reversible. It's not reversible. That accumulation of plaque in the arteries is something that what we see in genetic studies, what we call Mendelian randomization, is that people who have, I don't want to get too detailed here, but this PCSK9 knockout genes to where they don't get high cholesterol, they have very low cholesterol throughout their lifespan and have very low cardiovascular disease. And then just the opposite of that, you get people with hypercholesterolemia from a very young age who might end up with some cardiovascular disease incidents in their teens or their early 20s, the other extreme of that. And so, it's a whole discussion. I know that social media is out there telling people not to worry about LDL cholesterol, but in fact, when you're working with a big athlete like that, it's a pretty significant. It's a life course disease. It's a long-term thing, and I want to look out for their long-term health. And so you get a Mitchell Hooper who's reasonably young, but he's pushing that weight limit at 330, 340. I don't want him eating a ton of saturated fat. I want him getting a blood test and controlling ApoB. People always ask me, a lot of athletes will ask me, how long can I do this? And I said, well, that's going to depend on how healthy you may be. Can you keep your blood pressure under control? And are you, potentially accelerating cardiovascular disease? Are you compromising your kidney or your liver? So we test those things in the blood tests. And I know that you work with an organization that does blood testing as well, and that's pretty important.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. I demand, like with all my athletes, I demand immediately a blood workup, because there might be some hidden things going on that they don't even know about, and you're trying to counter it with a diet, and you're putting them more in danger. And I've always I always tell my athletes, hey man, I want to know you like when you're a freaking father and grandfather and being able to be healthy with your kids. And Stan said he gets a lot of questions. How long can I do that? If you have, and I believe in blood work when I call it your coldest, when you're nothing, right? So it should be great. Then I want to do blood work when you're your hottest, when you're like basically you'll piss turpentine through a freaking cup and burn it, right? And then right after that, I want to know what your blood work is like so now I can see how far away you got from your beginning. And that lets you know how long you can get down or not. And I'll just have that conversation like, hey, this is where you were. What do you think about that? Do you want to continue? Or your numbers look great, man. You're almost back to where you started.
We don't just fight insurance companies, we train for it. If you want results, get a lawyer that puts in the work. 107. Do you trust a lawyer that doesn't train? 102. Or a lawyer that quits when it gets tough. Pacific West Injury Law. We're built to win.
It's no way of knowing that unless you had blood work. And I know there's a couple of pro athletes who passed away, and later on they found out they knew it, but they had some hidden agenda with their heart and they never told the person about it. So you have to have blood work. I believe bodybuilding is a sport you live for, not die for.
Do you know a lot of normal people don't have blood work, though?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And I mean, go ask anyone
Yeah.
on the street. Like,
Yeah.
go to a guy in the gym that just
Yeah.
works out for fun.
Yeah.
Works at 9 to
Yeah.
5. And when's the last time you went for blood work
Yeah.
or even a physical?
Yeah. And I'll say that like people will like invest in their portfolio, they'll invest in their car, their hair, they'll invest wives or invest in shoes and this, that, and other.
health
And you
is your
don't
number
invest in
one.
a thing that
Yeah,
makes
hell
all those
yeah.
things happen. So I just don't get it now. When I first had blood work done, I think I was 17, and it was just a doctor in the gym who was a great guy, and he's just like, hey, let's do some blood work up on you. I just want to see where you're at. And even back then, it showed that I was leaking 1 gram of protein in my urine, and he couldn't figure it. So focal segmental scoliosis wasn't well known at all back then. So he's like, he goes, if you're a drinker, I would tell you to slow down in drinking, but I just don't get it. But now I understand that was the first marker for me to now be
Beginning
aware
stages,
to
yeah.
look at this, because this might be a problem later on. So now we understand that. And I got to teach my kids about blood work, because that's going to be the first thing they see to see if they have the disease that I have. But you just,
One of the challenges is you don't feel high blood pressure.
yeah,
You
no.
don't feel cardiovascular disease accumulating, cholesterol accumulating. You don't feel those things until something,
And if you're an
tragic
extreme
happens.
athlete, you're putting yourself through abuse anyway. I mean, like, you're freaking torched after a workout, headache, fatigue, and everything. So we'll write that off like I had a hard workout. Yeah. It's like a boxer in a ring boxing, and their retina is detaching from their brain, so they feel the pain. Of course I feel the pain. I'm being punched in the head. They don't know that damage is going on, or else they would have stopped, right? So you don't feel, and it comes along so slow. It's like you seeing a person in high school that you haven't seen in 30 years. You see all the changes, but if you live and see that person, you don't see those changes over time, and it happens so suddenly. So I mean, I talk on my podcast, man, get blood workup done just to know what's going on.
well, unfortunately now it's more affordable and more accessible than ever before. You can do it on the internet.
Yeah.
Print out a
You don't
form.
need to
I
go
just
to a
went and
doctor
got
anymore.
I got a blood test this morning. They don't have those kinds of facilities available in American Samoa where I moved. But when I come to the States, I usually, at least a couple times a year, will get blood work to see how I do. So I was just there this morning doing that. And it's amazing how convenient it is now. You just print out a form that your provider sends you, and then they email you the results in 4 to 5 days. And
I have some come to my house
yeah,
and draw.
it's fantastic.
6 in the morning, yeah.
And then
You
most
just set
of
an
these,
appointment, they
so
come
you
get
did
it.
it fasted.
Yeah, fast in the morning,
Yeah.
6 in the morning,
Yeah.
just come.
many of these telehealth groups, and they're not all the same, but they're smarter about blood work than they were when I started getting it 20 plus years ago. And they would be concerned about maybe a ALT liver enzyme elevation, but not understand that just a simple workout's going to do that.
Yeah.
And that, you have to go a little deeper.
I want to ask you about calcium score. What do you feel? I know you're not a doctor, but
The
how do you
CAC
feel?
scans. Yeah. Well, CAC tells you have an existing cardiovascular disease, but about half of all heart attacks occur in people with 0 CAC, because it's the soft plaque that is actually a concern. And they have good, CT angiograms now with contrast dye
I
that
went last year.
and did that one.
I did a CT
Yeah.
scan and did a.
The clearly, yeah. And what's
It's
interesting,
concerning at 50, in my early 50s.
it's good, it's smart. And the American College of Cardiology just came out with some new guidelines. And really, they absolutely take into account other metabolic health problems, such as insulin resistance, high blood pressure. Those are all things that can compromise the endothelial lining, but it is the ApoB particle, the atherogenic particle, that penetrates, that is the causal factor. Now, if you've got pretty strong endothelial lining, then you're going to have less long-term risk than someone who also has these. So the causal factor is the ApoB, is the atherogenic particles. Everything else is what we call, I think, an accelerator of the disease. And so I know people say, well, it's not the cholesterol, it's insulin resistance, it's the sugar. And it's both. It's almost like saying, well, I drive the speed limit and wear my seatbelt, so it's okay if I text while I drive. I just, when people say things like, you know, oh, don't worry about your LDL as long as your trig to HDL ratio is okay and your fasted insulin's fine, then you're good. And that nothing could be further from the truth. You're better than someone who doesn't have those problems, who does have those problems. But again, how high for how long is the concern. And most of the big athletes, the power lifters, and the people that we know that have passed away generally were in the off season with the higher blood pressure. And
See, I never had blood pressure issues, even at 300 pounds.
it's fantastic.
Really?
Yes, never had it.
That's the first thing that people.
And
should-
I think a lot of it's
be aware of.
genetic, right? I mean, my dad was,
Yeah.
I mean, he died at 92, but he never, like, he smoked for 20 years, never had any issue
had
with
blood
that, never had, like, he didn't have diabetes or anything, you know, so
It was
it's-
called hypertension when I was younger. I used to get nosebleeds, and a doctor kind of explained it. You know, your blood pressure gets too high, and a leader in your nose opens up and relieves that. So it started as a young kid for me. Yeah, I still do to this day have high blood pressure. So yeah, I think it's hereditary.
Very, very damaging to the kidneys as well when you have high blood pressure. It's like running a pressure washer through a coffee filter.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most dangerous things. That's where we see a lot of the powerlifters and guys who get themselves into trouble with their kidneys and end up potentially on dialysis. It's from uncontrolled hypertension for years.
Yeah.
And they just, I don't know if it's, I don't know why people wouldn't get that done with as much awareness as we have about that now. Maybe they just don't want to know because they want to keep doing what
I
they're
think
doing.
some people are scared. They know
Well, I mean,
something's
listen,
going on.
90% of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have incredible medications now,
I
and we
understand.
know so much more about these medications now.
But they don't feel it and they don't visually see it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm going to the gym every day. I'm getting up. I'm eating the meals, you know.
I
and-
exercise. I got a
Yeah.
6-pack.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. You're going to be a good looking corpse.
Talk about what you're doing with the kids now. Talk about now transitioning,
Yeah.
moving.
You know, when I was here, I started
How in
a
Vegas were you? How long were you here in Vegas?
13 years.
When did I come over to the body powerlifting thing you did? Do you remember? You guys did an event.
Was it at the
at the
gym?
Olympia 2012.
You did some event over, like
No, at a
you know,
gym.
Yeah, at
Yeah,
a small
remember the
gym. I
gym.
came over to
Yeah,
support
I
it. I don't know what was
forget
going
what
on there.
years.
Do you remember? Were you
Yeah,
there
yeah,
then?
yeah.
I don't think you were living here then, no, were you?
No, I
Or-
wasn't. I came to visit. Yeah, I came to visit.
But I came by and you were hosting
It was
something
two. It was
there.
two older people who owned the gym. They ended
Oh
up
yeah,
like,
yeah. That was a grand opening of what we were hoping was going to be a chain of
like power gyms.
of
or-
Fletcher.
CT Fletcher's.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
gyms.
okay.
Yeah.
That was. We were hoping that we could be one of the franchises there, but
Yeah.
it didn't work out too great. But I opened up a gym with a business partner, you know Eric, Sin City Iron, and I started a kids power hour over there. Every Saturday morning, I would have kids come over and learn about how
How
to
young
lift.
kids?
They were all ages. Sometimes they'd bring in 6-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids, all the way up to high school. And so about 2 years ago, I moved to American Samoa, where my wife was born and raised. We were raising our kids there. I had a 10 and 12-year-old at the time. They were 12 and 14 now. And so I started a kids pickle power hour down there, pickle pals, pickleball.
It's so popular.
I ended up becoming
huge in pickleball.
I lived
Oh,
right on
dude.
Sunset Park here in Vegas. And so I could walk to the pickleball courts, and I just kind of fell in love with it. I watch you do cardio, and you seem to enjoy it. And I think that's fantastic. And all of my clients, I'm like, what's the best exercise? The one you'll do.
I do it twice a day.
Everybody should exercise.
Do you really still?
I couldn't possibly, you couldn't convince me, you couldn't torture me to get on a treadmill, which is why I'm glad I fell in love with pickleball. Because like some of my friends do jujitsu, and you know, everybody has, another one rides bikes. Find something you enjoy doing and do it consistently is all that matters. There's no one better than the other in that regard. And so I kind of enjoy that because I'll go out in the morning for an hour and drill or play, and I'll go back at night and play. And so it's activity for me, really. I still like to lift weights, and I always will, but you know, that movement is important. And I always had those 10-minute walks after meals for 3 times a day. So I'd get 30 minutes of exercise. But obviously exercise is hugely important, but the only exercise you're going to do is the one you enjoy sustainably. It's one of the biggest problems with diets and exercise is that people just don't adhere to them long term. And so
Again, can you visualize this guy? What do you look like before? I mean, I'm like, I've always been like over impressed with his various different abilities to go into bodybuilding. at a high level to be like ridiculously strong. And now his joints being able to handle him doing that different lateral movement.
I got to
You
be
know what I
honest,
mean?
though. I had some pains that I hadn't moved laterally in 30 plus
And
years.
it hurts a little bit?
And so the ankles and the hips it was a long transition period. I went through some what's that called? Plantar fasciitis. I kind of gave that to myself, which is kind of a
A
time.
lot of golfers get that. Yeah.
It's terrible because there's no real cure per se. It's kind of a time course thing. It just wears off after a while, and so you just keep moving. Mine lasted for the better part of a year. You get up every morning, and I had to have like slippers next to the bed because your heel hits the ground, and it's. But I noticed a lot of ankle, things from doing movements I hadn't done, but I, gradually now I don't have those problems. I'm able to play for
Dude,
a couple hours.
Pickleball, I don't get it.
It's
And
crazy.
He told me
So
about.
Phil
I'm
Heath
like,
was
wait a
playing the
minute,
other
what?
day.
Was he?
Yeah, I saw Phil Heath and Hani actually playing.
Whenever we go back,
We're gonna have to start some IFBB pickleball player challenge. I
So
want to be the
popular in
world's,
Las Vegas.
the world's strongest IFBB pickleball
Did you
player.
play Flex or?
You know what? I even though he talked about it, I never knew what it was. I finally looked up a video. I'm like, oh,
They're
this is
building
almost
a massive sports complex in Henderson with pickleball and everything.
Yep.
Now they got it at the Summit Club.
When I left, they didn't have any indoor pickleball places. Now they got about half a dozen of them. And
a lot of these
but
big
anyhow, I
warehouses
got down
turned into
to
pickleball
American
courts.
Samoa, and they had a pickleball group down there. And ultimately, they appointed me as president of the Pickleball Association of American Samoa. So now
you got that
I
going
should
for
have
you.
introduced him as the
Yes,
Exactly.
The world's
We got the world's strongest
pickleball
pickleballer.
player. That'll be on your thumbnail on the world's strongest pickleball player. And so we play every single day. It's absolutely beautiful there on the island. The island
What's it
itself
like
is
living there?
I was going to say, talk
it's
to us about.
amazing. I mean, it's like Honolulu without the tourism. The island is still preserved because, as we kind of talked off camera earlier, that 95% of the land is owned communally. It's been handed down for centuries to the families. It can't be sold, and so it's undeveloped or underdeveloped. See high-rise hotels there, and everybody there knows everybody. They're all family and friends. Great place to raise kids. The island's only 4 miles by about 18 miles. It's a small little island. About 40,000 people live there. About 80% of it is this mountain range. It was a volcanic island. It's just beautiful. It's like Jurassic Park looking, sort of just layers of 2,000 foot tall mountains that are just less than a mile and a half from the ocean. So it's just like that.
Yeah.
And just one road that goes the length of the, with a couple little offshoots, and then, connectors to the different villages and the different communal properties. 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on the island. So I drive a golf cart all around the island. I got my little golf cart that I drive.
Flex wouldn't like to go there. He likes to drive fast.
I say the island is like an incubator for children. Everything's about the kids, from the churches to the schools to the tutors to the coaches to the sports and activities. Everything is about the kids, and most of the families have large families.
How many?
My wife is one of 11 brothers and sisters, and her brother has 7. Another couple of sisters have 5 each. It's pretty common, 5, 6, 7 children. A lot of them end up moving off island for better opportunities. There's actually a 4% or so decline in population each year as a result of most of the kids moving off island. The benefit of that is most of the parents end up with a new Ford F-150 because the kids go get jobs, and they always look after their folks.
Well, it's a
And
25-hour limit, so like,
Yeah.
where do you get to drive? Like,
that's fine. They
you know?
they love it. And another thing is, it's legal on the island. I actually had to get a pickup truck after I got down there and discovered it's legal on the island it's for kids to ride in the back of the pickup truck. So everywhere you go, you'll see 6 kids riding in the back of the pickup truck, and everybody's.
This is everything that you're going through there is how it was here in the 80s and 90s.
I know. Yeah.
It's like
It's
we always
just-
ride in the back of pickup
It's
trucks.
amazing, and the children are safe.
Yeah, that was gonna
there's
say,
no marijuana
just,
on the
yeah,
island. There's no guns
yeah,
allowed on the island. So
yeah.
it's pretty strict in terms of
the
the laws
population?
there. About
40,000.
40,000 people live on the island. But an unbelievable place to raise kids. We were here in Vegas, and we liked it here. But I was a bit of a helicopter. My wife and I both helicopter parents who wouldn't let our kids out of our sight. Down there, we'll play pickleball for 2 hours and then go to the park looking. We're like, where are our children? and you don't worry about it.
Are they schooled, like homeschooled, or?
No, there's some great schools there.
Okay.
All the kids learn English. Most of them also know Samoan. They're very.
Are you standing out as the white rhino like crazy there, or what?
Yeah, I kind of came to the island. The Samoan folk, a lot of the Samoan
Common.
folks are familiar with
Often.
my history. But since being on the island, I started a new series that I've been posting on TikTok and Instagram called Palangi in Pongo. Palangi is a white person. And not a derogatory term there, as maybe Haole in Hawaii would be. It's just a descriptor. And so I started, and I just talk about things on the island that I enjoy. Things.
Driving
What's
on
the
his golf
Instagram?
cart.
What's the Instagram?
Stan Efferding. So
Okay, so
Instagram's
just-
at
yeah.
Stan Efferding. I have a bunch of little Palangi and Pongo. I'm driving around the golf cart. I'm just talking about just something random.
Sounds like a fun series that you got to watch.
It really is. It's just a few minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes where I'm just yapping about something on
You
the
go
island.
visit Flex, or?
I haven't been there
hasn't
yet.
been yet.
I haven't been there yet.
What?
Yeah.
How
It just
far is
sounds
a
beautiful.
flight?
It's a bit of a flight, because it's 6 hours from here to Honolulu, and then it's another 6 hours from Honolulu to American Samoa. It's down by Fiji.
And what's the airline that mostly flies? there
Alaska,
from here?
Hawaiian,
Okay.
they're the same now. They purchased out. There's 3 flights a week that go into American Samoa and out of American Samoa, just to Honolulu.
How far
so
from Fiji?
About an hour's flight to Fiji. So it's going to give you.
There's a bunch of islands down there.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to go to that area.
Tonga is down there.
Is there hurricanes and that kind of stuff? Or?
There's some high winds, but the weather's amazing. It's like living in a greenhouse. So you get these torrential downpours, and then the sun comes out.
And what is it like coming to Vegas now in July?
Well, it's a desert, and so it's a lot of brown as compared to a ton of green. And everything there. You literally have food falling off the trees there. Everybody
I was going to
has
say, you
gardens.
Food
guys'
must be
food guys
incredible.
real so good.
There's
Real
mangoes
food.
and avocados and bananas and pineapples and coconuts. I mean, it's just literally falling off the trees. Every 100 yards as you drive down the street is a fruit and vegetable stand with all these fresh fruits there that you could just go.
What's
buy from every
the
day.
cost of living like?
It's pretty reasonable, particularly if you're a resident there, because you're living the home that your family passed down to you. There's no house payment. There's no taxes. There's no property taxes, no insurance.
So where do you guys live right now?
When we first went down there, we lived in the home that is on the communal property that my wife grew up on with her relatives. And then we've recently rented a place that's up at the top of one of the, called Aloau. It's one of the villages at the top of the hill that just has this unbelievably incredible view of the ocean and the mountains as far as you can see in the greater Tafuna area, which is probably one of the larger populated areas with the airport, et cetera. So we're blessed up there. Everything's pretty modest. You're talking about cinder block with metal roofs. It has to be something to sustain the potential winds and rain, but it's comfortable, and it really is.
It's crazy where this guy can live. I mean, he lived in Seattle, Washington.
You said a crazy house. I heard about this house. It had glass and everything, right? I mean, some of the houses there. Your old house when you,
Oh, the one that we did the Cribs video at.
Yeah.
I had a $2.5 million, 11,000,
Which is probably
square
worth
foot
now
home.
what?
Oh, 4 plus, yeah. Right on American Lake there in Tacoma Lakewood area, which is a beautiful big ski lake. I was, and this was prior to bodybuilding. I came back to bodybuilding after the 07-08 real estate collapse because I was heavily vested in real estate. I was a real estate developer, and I had a construction company. We were building homes, and I had over 500 units of multifamily property all throughout the Northwest there, in Aberdeen and Linwood and Everett and downtown Seattle and Tacoma, 60, 70, 80, 100 unit complexes. It's kind of how I cut my teeth through college, was managing small apartment places for free rent, and then I eventually got a job at a 500 unit community, and then worked for a big REIT, a real estate investment trust, and ran a portfolio of about 1,200 units. And so I had a lot of experience in that, and then I just started buying small places and then building, and then 07-08 came, and I had to sell everything off in a fire sale because the properties depreciated so substantially, and the banks wanted me to pay down the difference from those, what the loan was and the current value of the property. And it was millions and millions and millions of dollars of cash at the time that they were asking. So I had to sell off and it was a fire sale. I sold my home, which I owned outright at the time. And it was right then that I was like, stock market sucks, real estate market sucks, I think I'll go back into bodybuilding for a while.
And I remember that time.
And that's when I
'cause,
met Flex.
I remember that time because that was when like you literally had millionaires killing themselves.
Yes, jumping.
And
in
I
front of
remember
trains.
Stan, I remember him and his cars in his house, and we did that video. I'm like, what did you do? And he goes, I went back to work. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I went back to work.
Yeah.
That just mentality of just switching over, hey, I made this, I'll make it again. And where you had other people like literally just taking their lives over that. So
I've been fortunate. I was able to build 3 more successful companies subsequent to that time period when things were tough. Obviously, I mentioned earlier the vertical diet has been quite
Yes,
successful.
very successful. So your bodybuilding worked out for you well.
It really did, yeah. Add
know,
a
I
meal
mean-
prep company to that, and it really did.
I mean, the relationships you built, and
Yeah.
I mean the networks. I mean that's why it's people always looked up to your achievements. Because like you're one of these people you try to introduce like pro bodybuilder, entrepreneur. Like there's so many different hats that you wear, right? I know you give a lot of credit to Flex, but probably the biggest gift that all of us sitting here, and even him in a short sense, because we started this podcast, is the influence you have on people.
Yeah.
Like you don't understand how many positive messages we
Yes.
get. You don't understand because I know for me, like it's hard for me to sit there and watch a podcast like front to back, right? I mean, we do the cardio or
Right.
your life is probably so busy now, and I mean, you still
Yeah.
work out and stuff. So sometimes like I'll listen to stuff as I work out, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I listen to things, but it's hard for me to sit and lock in. But these people religiously watch
Yeah.
and listen to what we say. So that's
Yeah.
why the educational process is so important to tell the life story, because it's experience that people may never, they just want to
Yeah.
get a little piece of living in that world
Yeah.
for that few minutes that they listen.
yeah.
And the appreciation, like we go around the world, and that's one thing he mentioned, bodybuilding, how like influential it is. Worldwide audience.
Yeah.
Flex, think about all the country you visited.
And some of the and some of those countries, they don't have basketball. They can't afford one.
But they don't
they
know.
can work
They
out.
know who LeBron James
Yeah,
is, but they
yeah.
don't know. Like they might not know a James Harden
Yeah.
or like you talked about the
It doesn't matter where we go. If there's a politician, if there's a sheikh, if there's a royal person, they know the pro bodybuilders because you can go watch an MMA fighter. You want to see him punch somebody. You want to see a football player. You want to see him tackle. They become fans of you guys because they get information from you that can make their life better.
You just said
so
it.
they feel like they feel like they know you.
more people take a piece of bodybuilding
Yeah.
in their
Yes.
lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
think about, these gyms. We talk about all these gyms opening in Vegas. You have a gym, right? I mean, it's so many people
Yeah.
are working out now,
Yeah.
more than ever.
Yeah.
Agreed.
You
Yeah.
watched all these actors come through and athletes.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
you rubbed elbows with the greatest.
Oh man, crazy. And the thing about it is, I think with everything, even in business, they see all the glory of it, but they don't see any of the gory. So I think, for people who have any type of influence who've made it, I think it's so important that they talk about the hard times that they went through to build that, because people only see you when you're way up here, but they have no story of it. So a lot of people, and I think really in this generation, they're not aware of the hard work that we put in before we got there. So hence they think they're like, hey, I'm going to be a Miss Olympia. Like I meet somebody, hey, I'm going to be a Miss Olympia. I'm like, good luck with that. Yeah. Or if I get an athlete immediately like, hey man, I want you to help me become, Mr. Olympia. I'm like, I'm not the guy for you. No, you did. I'm like, I'm not the guy. I'm going to fail. I couldn't do that for me. And you're now, and that's your goal. That what you, I forgot it. I'm not a statistic guy like that, but how many Mr. Olympias they are versus how long the Olympia's been going on. That's a really short list. But
been a
guys
lot more in the
immediately
last
like,
few years,
they want
was
to be the next
14
LeBron.
until
Yeah.
recently,
Yeah. They want to be the next LeBron James and wearing all this gear. They ain't even learned the basics of it. You know what I mean? So I think it's so important that we talk about the times that it was before we got there. Then we're human. They can't like understand where we're at, anything. They can just see that glory. But we talk about our struggles and what we went through and our ups and downs, our depression and our failures. Now we're human to them, and now there's a connection.
Vulnerability, yeah.
Yeah. Now there's a connection, and they can then like relate to us. But if they just see the lifestyles that we live and travel in all these countries, I can't relate to that, man. I work, man. I go through struggles. Are you kidding? I'm worrying about my bills today. But when we talk about we had those times, like you're relatable. Now you're a human being instead of somebody that they have way up on this pedestal. And I think it's so, and I see a lot of people doing that. I see The Rock now talking about that. He went through depression and suicidal and stuff like that.
Lane Johnson.
You know, so Dwayne Johnson,
Or Lane Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles took 2 weeks off in the middle of the season. To go
when you see people
seek
that
therapy,
reach such a pinnacle, but then they talk about like what it was getting there, you know how about many more people they touch versus them being this great athlete? And you really help people. Like you said, Jay, I mean, I can't tell you how many messages I got that a person like, man, you saved my life.
Yeah.
I watched this podcast and I was just about to do this. And and it happened to see in the Jay Cutler podcast that you on there.
You cried on our
I do.
podcast, you know?
Yeah. Because
That,
it's
that
just,
got thousands of messages.
yeah. And I get so many messages of people that, and you're just not aware of the people you touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. In our
Selfishly.
sport. Yeah.
Like to do what we did, you know, but at some point, if you look at all this successful, if you look at like the hockey now and all the MMA, they've had like these build-ups to show the background, like these series they're doing on cable.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding will get that eventually.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding is good. All it's going to take is to show like this is how this group prepped, and then this is the outcome. It's $1 million for I hate to say it, but the money factor at the end is going to help drive that interest in to say, wow, there's actually a purse at the end of this thing, because people used to come up to me and they're like, I'm a pro bodybuilder, and like, oh, can you make money doing that?
Yeah.
And I was doing really financially well at the time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of an insult in a way, but it just showed how much of a niche we were.
Yeah.
And how unrecognizable, and you intimidated people just walking in the room, and then you open your mouth and you're just spilling out all this knowledge of like spinning people's heads around, like not even understanding what the hell you're talking about. You know what I mean?
And I like that we take it as a big responsibility, because like you said, you influence people's lives. And so we're trying to give good information and trying to be sensitive and not mislead people. It's a lifestyle. I mean, since you were a teenager, since I was a teenager, so it's a lifestyle. Who's the young man, hugely popular, millions of followers, just got his pro card recently?
Sam Sulek.
Sam Sulek.
We had him on the podcast.
People follow him that's a lifestyle. They can see themselves in him. He didn't do anything extraordinary. He was just driving around in his car, just being himself, just a guy. And I think that's what.
Do you watch his stuff?
I've watched a bunch
I mean,
of his
look,
stuff.
you look at the age that you're at, and you're watching a 22-year-old kid.
Agreed.
That, you know, in our world, his body isn't anything extraordinary.
Right? But the lifestyle is the same lifestyle.
The effort,
that we became engrossed in, and all of his followers.
You know what's going through my head right now? When you said I live in a box, and all these kids are putting boxes on, and they're coming up to him in a freaking box.
Cardboard box now.
There it is.
Because it's true, Flex. And think about, how you prep for a show. It's like you had a world that was kind of this big, right?
Yeah.
Eat, sleep, train.
Yep. Yeah.
When you train twice a day,
Yeah.
you knew you weren't effing off between the morning and the afternoon session. That's what kept you on track.
Yeah.
Think about the opportunity you could have had to. You were making money, nice cars, dating, whatever you were doing. Like you could have done all these things, but you were so honed in. I mean, you stepped out of a crazy successful business world to
With 2
pigeonhole
bags,
yourself into
flew
an
down to San
apartment.
Jose and lived in an extended stay. And then right after
But
that,
you loved it, right?
I took those same 2 bags and I went to Sacramento and stayed in an extended stay and trained with Mark Bell at a crappy little 800 square foot gym with a bunch of meatheads like me, a bunch of meat neck powerlifter guys. And those are 2 of probably the most significant, other than, of course, my children, subsequent to that. But those, I can remember both of those as being just kind of highlights of my life. And it wasn't, I was living in extended stay with 2 suitcases.
Those are I call them, those are the fuck it moments.
Yeah.
When you
it's
grabbed
like-
your shit and said, fuck it, let's do it.
And when
Whatever
you say
happens,
box,
happens.
when you say box, I mean, I had to do that. I had to create this alter world that I had to live in. And I literally would brainwash myself that people go out and have fun and party and go to the movies. They're freaking stupid. They're out of their freaking. What I do in this hellhole is normal, because I couldn't live in both worlds. I couldn't train hard and then go to the movies afterwards. I couldn't do that. If I did, I'd cheat. I would just lose it trying to live in both of those worlds. But I literally created this alter world where my world is normal and all the rest of you guys are freaking idiots. I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Things were simpler then, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you simplified a lot of things. I mean, living where you live, I mean, I don't know what your days are structured like, but like what's a rise up and lay down?
They're
time?
structured around the kids, really. You get up at 6 a.m., you get the kids ready for school, take them to school, and then you've got that window of opportunity. Usually I'm either practicing pickleball or going to the gym, and then, we've got obviously still some business stuff that we do. My wife has a boutique that she runs online on Facebook Live that's been very successful, and she ships clothing all over the country and now even off island. So we have our business stuff, but we're kind of focused on, we pick the kids up, and then it's it's choir or dance or swimming or the park, or we kind of and because we've only got 4 to 6 years left, and those kids are in college, and so I don't. There's nothing.
Are you
else.
scared of that side?
I don't know if I'm scared of it. I just don't want. I don't want to look back and be like, what happened here in Vegas. That kind of makes me appreciate it even more is that I bought a big house here and I was remodeling it, and it was an older home, and prior to that, I was just living on Grand Legacy Golf Course in a place, a postage stamp lot that had almost no house maintenance. And every time I would take my kids to school in the morning in a golf cart, because we were in a little golf cart community. And when they got out of school, I was able to go pick them up from school, and they could play at the park as long as they wanted, right? Most of my business was online, so I would. Then when I got that house, all of a sudden, all the yeses became no. I'm too busy. I got to do this. Sorry, son. I got it. It was always sorry. And I just, at some point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to lose this very limited point of time, the most important time. Because I know once those kids, even when they get into high school, they're going to be, they're going to be running around with their buddies, and I'm going to be like, can I come?
Yeah.
But I've got 4 years left with my daughter and 6 years with my son before they're in college. And so I'm committed to make sure it's yes. If they want to go to the beach, if they want to, whatever they want to do. And
I'm creating memories for them to have.
Agreed. So everything to me now, and it was kind of one of the things somebody asked me, what changed when I had kids, and probably the most immediate thing is that you just realize you're not the most important person in the world anymore, especially after such a long career of being so, you use the word selfishly, but you're, even with business,
honed in on
you're just so focused on one thing, and everything else is a distraction. And then when you have kids, all of a sudden you're like, hey, and you want to focus on them. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And
I kind of look at time now, like I value, because I listen to like a lot of people as you age, right? I mean, we're all, I'm fit, you're just crossing the 60 mark, but I mean, you realize that time is limited, like the time that you want to do things. And what scares me the most, honestly, guys, is I have these conversations. I've had these conversations since I turned 40. Is like, you're going to wake up at 40. It's going to be different. And I'm like, damn, I feel great at 40. Yeah. Then they said the same at 50. And I woke up and I'm like, what do you mean? I did the Fit for 50. I'm like not slowing down one bit. I think I feel better at 52 than I felt at 22.
Yeah.
And you're talking, I could tell when you came in, you're like, I'm good, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like you get everyone's negativity of like, oh, wait till you get to this. Every year it's like, 55. That's what someone just told me the other day. 55, it just went bad. I'm 53 this year. So it's like, am I going to be that guy?
And we, as young athletes, I remember, I mean, it's horrible to say, but I remember like in Go's gym, an older person coming in. I'm like, dude, your hair is filling you. I mean, like your body. I mean, look, man, your legs are swimming in those freaking baggy pants. And, I'm like, oh man, it may suck to be 30. And then when you come 30, it's like, yeah, it's not that bad. When you come 40, it's like, yeah, the sliding ruler continues to go. Yeah. But just our outlook, and my one of my greatest fears is being that guy in the gym, and I battle with that. Even though when I go in the gym, people are like, man, it's just great to see you in here. I battle with like, I don't want to be that old guy in the gym, walking around struggling and stuff like that. And I just have a hard, like look on life like that. But, I just constantly get remarks like, man, it's just, man, when you come in the gym, it's like just a different energy. And
dude, I mean, you're an icon, and I think, your place belongs in the gym to help motivate people. you know, and I mean, I look at someone like you. Do you ever look? You know what scares you the most is I watch these guys like on a hack squat now, and they got 8 plates on a side, and I'm like,
Yeah.
please
Milos.
don't tear
Yeah.
your please
Oh my
don't tear
God.
your
I'm
knees
like,
because
yeah.
I forget. I was that guy, and
Yeah.
I had no knee wraps, anything. I'd
Yep.
load 8, 9 plates on there, and I
Yeah.
would just like a piston.
Yeah, like
but
a
I watch these
piston.
guys do it, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, this guy's not that big, first of all, and I mean, I'm just like, please, I can't even watch it.
Yeah.
And you've seen it a
Oh
million
yeah,
times.
it's crazy.
too.
I mean,
Yeah.
I train in the
Yeah.
gym and I see women doing more weight than me, and I'm like, good God Almighty. I mean, and then I got to do that machine after them, and I was polite, like, hey, listen, can you just like go to a completely different area of the gym? I just don't want you to see me doing that. But I think about that all the time when I see people, you know, doing heavy work. Like, oh, it's gonna tear, it's gonna tear, it's gonna tear. But when I was doing, I was like, yeah, get it, and
You're getting soft.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Old
you
guy
ever,
in the gym.
you ever think about the weight that you? I mean, you're not messing with heavy squats like that anymore, are you?
Yeah,
Or-
I don't try and do big singles. I still like to lift with a pretty
much?
high degree of effort, reasonably close to failure. I want to maintain as much strength as I can for as long as I can while being safe. I mean, I just went out and trained with Matt in Cincinnati. Those guys are younger, and they always push me to my limit. And we did 500 plus silver bands. So I think that's almost a 650-pound deadlift I pulled with them.
Is
last
that the
week.
recent picture you just posing with your shirt off next to some guy?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes the people post those and I repost
okay,
them.
all right.
But that was last week. I pulled a 650 or thereabouts.
Is it because you haven't stopped? I don't even. What's
I
the gym
agree-
like
I
on,
agree
on the
with that.
island? First of all,
Yeah,
I'm not
actually,
gonna ask you that.
there's a pretty decent gym there.
Did you
that-
bring equipment there, or
the gym owner? I worked with the gym owner to have equipment brought in. He bought it, but he let me choose what to put in there, and so I've got all the stuff that I could ever want. Other than air conditioning, we don't have any air conditioning. It can get a little warm in that tin building, but everything's there that I need. I don't train as long or as often. I train every other day now. I'll do an upper day off, lower day off, upper day off, lower day off, and I just keep doing that. And I do get a little sore for a little long, and I should probably blame that on pickleball because I spend at least a couple hours a day, you know, darting back and forth and lunging and on the court. And I know it's gay as hell to talk about pickleball as a sport necessarily, but it can be pretty taxing to do all that lateral lunging and lurching and
Especially
stopping, change of direction.
You got a good amount of muscle on you, so you're
still
it's a lot of
230, and it's hard to move around. But that's down from where I was previously, and so I'm comfortable, and I should get down even lighter. But I try and I want obviously strength is going to decline and size is going to decline over time. I just want that to be as gradual as possible. I'd like to maintain as much strength as possible without compromising my joints or my health. And you know, knock on wood, my knees and hips and ankles are all, considering everything I did to myself over the years, they're all healthy. So
Crazy.
sounds like you love what you're doing, which is awesome.
I
you
do.
know?
That's one of the things. And I wish that for everybody. I wish everybody would find a passion that some, you know, call it extra. We say we play pickleball. And we accidentally get some exercise. And we've got about 70 or 80 people in our pickleball association down there, and a lot of them, you know, in American Samoa, we do have a big problem with obesity on the island, and a lot of them are larger folks that have lost weight as a result of coming out every night for a couple hours. And
Is that a
playing.
genetic? Because I remember seeing something that's one of the
You
places
know,
that has. Is it a genetic thing?
It's hard to talk about genetics. It's so multifactorial in terms of obesity. There is some literature to suggest that some people have a greater appetite dysregulation, and and the problem with that is then they're surrounded with this food environment that so they have a hard time. They're just not as satiated as quickly. This food noise where they just think about food. They eat a lot of ultra processed, hyper palatable, calorie dense foods and liquid calories with the sodas, and that's just caused us in general. This is, you know, the research from Kevin Hall at the NIH has compared obviously ultra processed foods to whole foods, and people just tend to their satiety signals. These ultra processed foods tend to bypass their satiety signals to where they can eat about 300 to 500 more calories at a sitting. And the cumulative effect of that over many years, it's not like they're eating 10,000 calories at once. There's extreme ends, but most of what's happening is we're eating 500 more calories than we used to be because the foods aren't giving us the satiety signal. And we do that consistently, especially around the holidays. Yeah. And then next thing you know, it's 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds. And on the island, unfortunately, most of the stuff that gets there that's the most affordable on a shipping container is white flour, sugar, and oils. I'm not going to even say vegetable oils specifically. It's just, high fatty foods. And then they have, obviously, they eat a lot of really high fat, like turkey tail. Is it called mutton flaps, the belly of a sheep? Food that in Australia and New Zealand they feed to dogs. Unfortunately, the Samoan folks have an appetite for it because it's more affordable. It's very tasty. They like that, the fat taste. So they're taking in an enormous amount of calories, and then they celebrate a lot. Everything down there is a celebration, whether it's a funeral or a wedding or a graduation or a holiday. Folks get together, church, you name it, bingo. Folks love to get together with family, and they eat. And also historically, I think having been traditionally a poorer community, food was scarce. And now with food stamps on the island, of course, it's abundant. Everybody has access to about all the food that they can eat. And it's unfortunately just like the U.S., but even it's something like 93% of the island is overweight or obese.
Do a lot of the meats get imported, or is a lot of fish?
A lot of the meats get imported, unfortunately, because when my wife grew up in Savai'i, a neighboring island, they grew all their own food. I think it's a British-owned, so they didn't have food stamps there, but they grew all their own food. I did a video on this, what we can learn from the fattest people in the world. Sorry for the thumbnail, but it talked in depth about when she grew up. They raised pigs and they had chickens, and they grew all their own food, and they sold it at the marketplace, so it became a commodity for them. So they didn't overconsume it. Plus, it was taro root and mentioned fruits and vegetables. The father would go out and fish. They would, whatever they could catch from the ocean. In Samoa, which is different than American Samoa, Samoa used to be British ruled, and they don't have food stamps there. They still grow a lot of their food and have a vibrant marketplace with 3 generations of family that work there, and they trade and barter and sell these foods that they grew, and they have a much lower obesity rate, although those cheap ultra-processed foods have permeated everywhere, the sodas and everything else I just mentioned. But in American Samoa, they have for many, many decades now had those ultra-processed foods. Brown University for over 30 years have been down there studying the obesity epidemic on the island, and they've sent caseworkers into the villages to speak to people about diet and exercise. Unfortunately, as we've discovered here, move more, eat less is truthful but not useful. It just doesn't work. The vast majority of people are unable to adhere to a diet long term and can't lose weight. And so the original question being, is it genetic? I don't know if that's specific to those folks, but we do
environmental.
It's all together. Some people have an increased appetite signaling, and they don't get satiated as well. And then they're surrounded by cheap, accessible, high-calorie foods, and that's part of the problem that's going on right now.
And there's no big exercise that they do or anything like that, so they don't
unfortunately,
burn it off.
the challenge with exercise is not very effective for weight loss. And when I say that, people kind of get upset, but they've studied this extensively for a couple of decades now, at least.
If you're not eating right,
you can't out-exercise a bad diet. What happens with exercise, and this is Herman Ponzer's work there's a compensatory mechanism whereby the more you exercise, your body starts to down-regulate energy expenditure, whether it's your BMR or your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and it increases your appetite. So sometimes when people go on these weight loss programs and they end up cutting their calories way down and then like joining a CrossFit gym and then busting their ass to try and burn off the fat, they sit more and eat more. They get tired and hungry. And that's part of that. They call it a constrained energy model of thermodynamics, where the exercise component, while great for your heart and lungs, exercise is fantastic and can provide a satiety benefit long-term for dietary adherence. As far as weight loss goes, it's not a critical component. On the energy expenditure side, energy activity or exercise activity thermogenesis is about 5% of the calories that are burned. 70% is your basal metabolic rate. 15+% is your thermic effect of food, and another 10-15%.
So
is
it
your,
needs to be a constant thing in your body to create
Lifestyle
that.
change.
yeah, it's. I hate throwing percentages at it, but it's like 95 to 99%. How many calories are you consuming? And the challenge there is that even if a 300-pound person loses 20 or 30 pounds, they have an unbelievable hunger signaling. They feel like they're starving to death. And none of us would consider that, that person at 270 to be lean enough. I have empathy for this, as we all do, because we've all had single-digit body fat competed. And we know what that last 2 months, certainly that last month, is like, where all you think about is food, 24/7. You go to bed dreaming about food. You wake up. I mean, you don't even want sex. You want food. That's it. That last month before the show. And imagine being like that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Imagine being that person, even though you're not lean, even though you're 250, 260, 270 pounds. Some people have that degree of appetite signaling. It's a leptin and ghrelin hormone issue where they just aren't satiated and all they do is think about food.
That's all I thought about when I didn't even care about winning 100K or.
No. I want
Didn't
to
you
eat
just-
You would notice
Pizza,
every
pizza, pizza.
fast food place on the corner.
Yeah.
You would notice
Taco
every
Bell,
freaking
right here,
yeah.
Taco Bell King.
You would notice every commercial
I
where
used to
before you
watch
didn't.
people eat flex and be like, you don't realize how lucky you are.
Yeah.
You know that?
And you know what sucks now, and bodybuilders now are the bodybuilders of our era. Some of them are getting really upset because now we have those GLP-1 agonists. We have those Wegovy, Ozempic, tirzepatide, retatrutide. Now it's nothing. I'm not hungry. I got my 1 milligram of retatrutide in my protocol.
Would that have helped your career?
I don't know. I mean, part of us feels like it's almost like you didn't have to work out.
A cheat
I mean, if
code.
somebody was able to take, if there was a medicine that made it so you didn't have to train hard, we'd be pissed. Well, now there's a medicine to make it you don't have to be hungry, and you can get ready for a bodybuilding show. That was part of the challenge.
Yeah.
You would
was
be able
part
to
of mine.
endure that more
I
than
was
the
the
next guy.
strongest mother effer there was.
Yes.
I didn't cheat on the diet.
Yeah.
Flex
I
16
seen
weeks,
the videos.
Yeah.
I was like
I
a
just-
robot. And
Now
I think
it's nothing.
now, but people like respect these kids are like, man, you were so regimented. Like,
Yeah.
how'd you do that?
Yeah.
Because today it's just too easy. Like,
Yep, little shot
They
once
want
a
a
week.
shortcut.
No hunger. You don't even think about food.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah,
That's
very
think about
incredibly
like when
effective.
you lost the Ironman that year, and
To
a week
Chris.
later you came to the Arnold and won. And
Yeah.
how bad how much
gosh.
torch? What'd you do for that week?
I was so embarrassed.
How much cardio did you do?
3 hours a day.
Oh my gosh! And
3
only
hours a
Flex
day.
Wheeler can do 3 hours of cardio and still show up round.
3 hours
Can
a
you
day.
imagine
Yes.
if you were that guy?
You know what? And I credit
I'd be a coat hanger.
I credit the judges for actually judging, because back then, if you won a show a week
you were
before,
screwed.
you're going to win all the shows. You're just. I credit them to actually judging the show, because I'm like, oh man, it ain't no way I'm going to change these judges' minds. And it was just, I mean, I had these like huge sores in between my legs because my inner
Rubbing
thighs
together,
were so big, and
I used to have to wear wind pants because
I would
shit got
I
so
would freaking
chafed,
put freaking Band-Aids, and then it would get super freaking hot and it would burst. And I'm doing cardio in my bedroom like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like in tears. For one, because I lost. For two, I'm in pain. For three, it's just agony. And then I did hour cardio right after training, and then did an hour cardio before I went to bed. And it was just like, and I would do it in the dark because I'm like, man, it's no fun. I don't want to watch no TV. I just want to immerse in this, and I'll just sit there and just freaking be just absolutely miserable. But yeah, I mean, what a
because that was
what
a big swing
change.
to second.
Yeah.
At the Arnold,
Yeah.
it's not like it's like winning the Olympia now, like 600 to 200 or 250. I think is second.
Yeah,
Like at least when I was, Ronnie was beating me, it was like 110. I got 75 for second.
Yeah,
So it wasn't
yeah.
as
No,
huge of a
no,
But
it
that
was
Arnold was like
major.
it was like 50 grand was second, right?
Yeah, it was major, man.
And
It
back
was
then,
major.
100K was
Oh,
like
jeez.
that was a big score back in
Yeah.
the early
My
2000s.
gosh.
You know,
About that now, the Arnold 750 now. And then 2 weeks later, you can go get another 250.
Life changing money.
Andrew Jack's season win $1 million in 1 year. You could literally call it after that.
Yes,
And if you
life
win the,
changing.
and if you go win the Olympia, it's 1.6.
Life, but I feel that our money should be there. It should have been there. I mean, kudos to Arnold. If I understand correctly, he had this relationship with Joe where he would never take his money over that, and then he kind of battled Jim with like doing that, and then finally he just said, "Hey man, listen, But I remember winning the Arnold, and afterwards I was at Nike Town. Me and Rico went to Nike Town, and Arnold was there, and Rico with his smart stuff like, man, go up and say hi to Arnold. I'm like, I'm not gonna go and invade this man space. He don't know me. So I walked around him, and he's like, hey Flex, how you doing? Give me a big hug, and I'm uncomfortable talking to him. So okay, so I'll walk away, and he's up there getting ready to purchase his stuff, which was for free for him. And I'm in line behind me. Go, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, getting ready to pay for my stuff, Arnold. He goes, no, seriously, what are you doing? So now I think he's joking with me because he's quick, right? I'm like, you're going to pay for my stuff. I'm waiting for you to pay me. He goes, no, honestly, what are you doing? I'm like, man, I'm about to pay for my stuff. And he literally cussed the person out, called the manager, cussed him out. Do you know what this is? You guys give all these football players all this free stuff. And he walked out. And at that point, I understand, man, this guy loves this sport. He understands what it did for him, what it did for him for movies and everything else. And, for him to take that stance and start helping athletes make the type of money we should have been making forever. Like I said, how is it that these other sports make millions, but they got to come into our world to get better? But we don't have, but it's their marketing. They're on TV, their market, they're on the news, they're in newspapers and all those things. But, kudos to him for doing that. But that's life-changing money.
Yeah, because I don't think we've had you on the podcast since the money jumped like that, right?
When you won, you were getting what, 100?
100.
I think it was. Oh no, it was 90. Yeah, it was 90 because I remember I won the Ironman, which was 10, and then a week after I won 90, so it was 100, and that was like the most. Honestly, that was the most anybody had made in my family tree.
Weren't you the winningest prize money guy for a year or two? Ever? In 93, you scooped up the most money, I think. Didn't you win a ton of shows?
Maybe, yeah, because it was more so the guest posing afterwards. And it was the guest posing afterwards. And remember back then when we did shows overseas, they paid you in cash afterwards. You waited there at nighttime. They gave you freaking your cash. So, you're coming out. I know the federal laws on that, but we're coming back across.
That's 40 years ago.
We got cash stuffed on our underwear and our socks
I think
and all that
was
stuff.
Before the $10,000.
Yeah. Well, hopefully so. But that's prize winning money now. That's two shows that I had to make 100,000, and one show you can make 75. Like you said, making $1 million. If you're smart with your money, you shouldn't have to work anymore.
Third place at the Arnold's 100.
Wow. But it should be that way. Look at the money that Arnold and him made. So I think at some point it was only $1,000. For winning the Olympia.
Might have been $500. If someone gave you $1 million right now, would you be able to do something with it?
Yeah. That's why I mentioned that the real estate market collapsed in 07 and 08, and I got out of real estate. Well, just this year, I got back into real estate.
It's very hot. I
was sworn off of it for all this time, but now I'm your neighbor. I'm building down the street from you for the first time since 08.
People see it every day. I was jaywalking this morning. I did my little episode.
When he says neighbor, it's like a literal neighbor.
It's
not like a mile down the street.
Yeah.
It's like
that's for you guys that watch, and that's the empty lot that you see every day on the jaywalking. That's his project. So
he's building a mansion.
Yeah. Are you going to move in it or what?
No, it's investment property.
No, I know. I was hoping maybe you move in
there.
there.
Hang on to it, then you can do jaywalking.
Maybe
new series from Samoa to jaywalking.
Great.
It's crazy.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you coming on, man. It was kind of I get a little surprised last week when I heard you were in town, and of course you show up. So
He sent me the text, but again, I mean, it just
this was
I
kind of
listen
unplanned.
to
So,
yeah. I listen to some of his podcasts all the time. Sometimes I'll give a comment, but still at this point, I'm dumbfounded. I mean, he's recanting these doctors and this, that, and other, and his knowledge and how he's furthered. It's like you just don't see this guy coming. You know what I mean? And just its intelligence, its ability to learn and all that stuff. But not only that, apply it in a way where a normal person can understand it and do it. It's absolutely, exceptional. I know, like, you're great because you won the Olympia. Me, maybe because of my body type or whatever. But this guy here is just completely different. And he's either on our level or above that because of what he can do. So, again, a lot of us is because of this sport. It's his ability and his knowledge and everything, and his just drive, his tenacity to learn. I remember, like, going over his house sometimes, and he's sitting there reading, and I'm like, and for me, I think we all envy a person who has something that we don't, right? We always look to that other person that we don't. So I've always just, like, envied him on his ability to learn, and not only learn, but apply it. It's like going through school. I mean, you learn something, but I couldn't apply it. I'd lose it right after. I'd study for a test, and whatever that test was afterwards is over with. But he retains that knowledge, and he's able to use this. Is absolutely just freaking mind-boggling, of where he's been, where he's at, and just sitting there listening to somebody with that type of intelligence is freaking absolutely crazy for me. So
Like you said, Jay, we have a unique opportunity. We're blessed to have the audience that we have, and we take it as a big responsibility to make sure that the information that we provide them is good information, not bad information, because there's potentially a lot of harmful information out there in social media now, and so we're very careful, and that comes, we have big responsibility, and so I never wanted to be stitched. I saw when social media, I saw this like 7-8 years ago, people were starting to call out all of the bro science folks, and people were making claims on social media that were potentially harmful to their health, to other people's health. And so, I'm really cautious about everything, all the content I put out. Sometimes I think I overthink it and don't do enough content because I'm concerned that there's a lot of nuance to all these topics. Different people have different, conditions, different medical conditions, different goals, and different genetic predispositions. And so, it's really hard not to, or to say something that
when you care about what you say and how it affect people.
Yeah. So we're doing the best we can. I think you benefit a lot from having so many different people on you. Kind of like Mark Bell, he just brings so many different experts to the table. And you learn and the audience learns, and I think it's the great thing about social media today.
Yeah, like I sat here and like you said, I've learned a lot of information. Like I have enjoyable guests. I mean, I interview some of the best athletes, but when you get someone with a lot of knowledge, like it's intriguing, right? I'm super intrigued by you moving to this, to where your wife's from, and like raising your kid. Like that's awesome,
And it wouldn't be possible without social media in the audience.
I know, but you're still like, where can people contact you? Like now,
everything's
best way.
Everything's at Stan Efferding. So StanEfferding.com is my website. At Stan Efferding is my Instagram, and Stan Efferding is my YouTube. So everything can be, I can be reached there.
And you're still doing
I'll link it in the bottom.
Yeah.
Still have meal prep. Still have online coaching. I still work with the vast majority of my clients are just weight loss folks.
But so lifestyle people and
lifestyle folks, athletes too as well. And I still, have the ebooks and books, and I can do all that remotely.
Vertical Diet, does it have its own platform?
Yeah. It's all accessible through StanEfferding.com.
Okay. Make sure you guys check it out. And then Flex, you're still doing a lot of coaching.
Yeah,
I know you're working with supplements.
Yeah, I really cut down on it because Stan and Dennis said something that I had to finally realize. Sometimes I'm overly invested in an athlete, and I'll put too much of my life and my feelings into it.
I remember.
And then when that athlete then turns and goes to somebody else when you help them get that successful, you know, it was kind of painful. And, you know, I had to start to understand that my time, even if it's just being with myself or my family, is sometimes more valuable than helping this person, because they're not going to care when they move on. You know, and that happens a lot in our sport. An athlete to get, I mean, you staying, with that helped you, though, Chris.
Cicito, yeah.
Yeah, Chris, and even Flex Lewis staying with his. That's super freaking rare that happens, because, you know, they show up once not in shape because you're trying to figure something out. And then you have these guys who are just freaking like trying to take your clients. That's very disrespectful, you know. So I really cut down on that now. You know, I'm more just focused on, you know, my nutrition company. I'm focused on my health. I'm trying to do my podcast where I'm just like brutally honest about the things I'm doing. I'm involved in a company that does peptides, so we're a pharmaceutical base. So I'm just trying to create, you know, and trying to just continue to learn and stuff like that. Right now, you know, I'm aware of something that I've been here longer than I'm going to be here. And I have a lot of health problems that I have to struggle with that might cause me to be here even shorter period of time. So me right now is like focusing on creating memories for my kids. So, and even through my struggles, I want them to see that, because they hear from everybody else of how great I was. But I want them to know that, no, like, I'm a human being. This is what I dealt with. And I know life is going to be hard for you. So I don't want you to always think that it was great for me. You know, I had struggles too. So I know that they're going to go through struggles. So that's one of the main things. I'm brutally honest with my kids. You know, I mean, they seen me in a hospital. They seen me in comas and all these different things. But, you know, the one thing I want them to learn is like, Daddy never gave up.
Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of motivational things for people.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. And I understand I think that's truly why I'm here, is to talk about the things that I've been through and how I got through them. And, you know, I mean, I have to put it out there. You know, people ask all the time, how are you able to do this? How are you able to do bodybuilding? How are you able to come back? How are you able to still walk? It's from him. All my strength, you know, comes from my Father in heaven. And I understand that, you know, certain battles are given to certain people because he feels that they can handle them. Sometimes I'm like, man, you got the wrong guy. But, you know, I'm also just here to just share my faith with people and try to open people's lives that is bigger than what we think. You know, what's going on with this division and race and countries and all that, man, we're all human beings, you know, and all that's just to distract us from just loving each other. We're just human beings. It just, we have different skins, but underneath that skin, we're absolutely the same people. And, you know, that's just the world. And that's what it is about division. You know, even in wealth and everything else is about division. And I'm just trying to be one of those guys that at the end of the day, I don't care about being known as a legend or any of that. You know, when I'm going, I just want people like, hey, man, I was a good guy. He just cared about everybody.
You know, with the World Cup going on now, I've noticed that all the people in the world actually get along. All the teams root.
Yeah,
you know,
I seen some guy with a
people
post.
cheered for him. And
yeah,
people, it's governments.
Yeah, I seen a kid with a board. He had a board, and he said, at the World Cup, he goes, you can see everybody got along. It's the governments that causes all this. And it's true. I mean, our sport, bodybuilding, man, we got Iranians. We got guys from and it's always been that way. I mean, we've been able to go to Russia when it's been hot regarding the United States, but our sport we accept everybody. I mean, I think one of the first time Hadi had won the People's Choice, well, people voted around the world. We don't care about that other type of type of crap. It's, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I just, you know, I
think one of the other things with that is you could go somewhere around the world. They don't don't have to speak your language. But if you go into a gym, you point to the equipment,
like, I mean,
they know what to do.
I'm no Jay Cutler or Flex Wheeler, but everywhere I go, I've been in 20 countries, and I don't make it through the airport without somebody like, and wanting to get a picture and tell you a story, even if they don't speak English for the most part. I was in Podgorica, Montenegro last year, and who would think somebody in the airport would be like, Stan Efferding.
Yeah.
And
It's like, how do you know me?
Yeah, it kind of hits you in the feels.
It's still
You know?
shocking.
I actually had that happen the other day here in Vegas. I was
Yeah.
telling you, I went to I went to a store, and I was putting up one of the reels for the podcast, and the guy behind the counter is like, "Hey, is that so and so?" And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, "Are you Matt? Oh my God, I watch your podcast." And he goes, "Hey, there's a famous guy in here." I'm like, "No, bro. I'm just
I was
on a
telling you about my
podcast."
little series, Palangi and Pongo. Now I go to the grocery store, and the people are like, "Can I get a picture of Palangi and Pongo?"
You
They
filming
don't-
my
they
store?
Don't know IFBB body. They have no idea. I'm just Palangi and Pongo. I'm some guy who talks about their island with respect, and they love it. So
Again, just the effect that we have on people, just a positive
Shark
effect
Tank
that we can
episode,
have.
bro.
yeah,
Hey, you're on
out
Shark Tank
aggressive.
too. You guys are
Yeah,
both you guys were.
yeah, that was awesome. I have a whole video on YouTube, behind the scenes of Shark Tank or something.
I watched it. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Anybody who ever has watched Shark
Came
Tank
out there all jacked up,
Oh yeah, lifting the weight and everything.
because it's the
We're
whole.
gonna
behind
get
the
one of the
scenes.
Shark Tank guys on here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh wow,
I'll say it off camera just because I don't know what's gonna happen.
yeah.
Right,
I
right.
partnered with Damon John on that.
yeah.
It's not him.
That's okay. I just
He was talking about my bodybuilding with Ronnie Coleman.
Yeah.
Like
He
we
knew
had a long
people.
discussion. Oh,
Yeah.
Mark Cuban also. They
Yeah.
were like all into it, you know.
Yeah.
telling you, everybody knows. They all
Yeah.
go
Yeah,
to the
they
gym.
were asked a lot of questions about the competitions and nutrition and all that.
They all know.
You could take some of the most famous athletes in the world to different parts of the world and say, would you rather see Jay and Ronnie, or would you rather see this person, this person? They'd be like, yeah, bring us Jay and Ronnie.
Also,
We're
I think
all-
I think also because we're accessible. You go to a football game, you can't go and talk to those guys. You go to an MMA game, you can't talk to those guys, but you can see us every day. You can see us on the street. You can see us in the gym. I think we're more accessible, and our lifestyles are just out there. We wear it on our sleeves. But I think truly they can just reach out and touch us. You know what I mean? And we respond, to them. So you can go to an expo and meet all of us. And I think that's why expos are so big. There's no NBA expo where you can just sit and talk to those guys. You know what I mean? So
Of the stars, anyways.
yeah,
I'll
definitely.
close by repeating this. We're all brothers and sisters in that.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, guys. Thank you for stopping in. And
No, I just want to give
again.
kudos to you too, Jay. Just what you did, what you done for the sport, even more so now what you're doing for the sport. Your podcast it's absolutely insane. I know we've had conversations before privately, like just your business mannerism and everything like that. But man, just what you're able to do through bodybuilding, and then also watching a lot of your old videos that I didn't know what you went through, and just learning like some of the things that you went through and everything. I have so much more appreciation for you. So I mean, just for what you're doing. I mean, with this podcast and you as a person, you'll never know how many people you reach out and touch and influence in a positive
I
way.
love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love doing it. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
inspired me a lot in the beginning. I walked into Gold's Gym and I saw you in there with those high atomics on, bro, and those tights. You had a beeper on your.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
You dressed
Oh
like
my
a superhero
gosh.
for real.
Yeah.
You had the bushy
Jeez.
socks
And the
on to make your
Hunskins.
calves
Oh
look
my
better.
gosh.
Yeah, Flex had the
Winning
best.
the
He had the
singlets.
best unitards ever,
he
man.
did.
Singlets.
Flex.
My gosh. Jeez.
All free clothes he had.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
He was modeling Perfetto.
Oh
and,
gosh.
Right?
Jeez. Yes.
Think about every store that was around the corner from Gold's. Like there was a Perfetto store. You'd make the rounds, right?
Yeah.
You'd go
Mike
pick up
Christian,
this. Yeah. Platinum
Gary
wear.
Stride.
Yeah, crazy.
Everybody.
wear.
Those are. I tell you, some of the clothes we wore back then and the colors, man, we'd
Oh,
be
my
highly
goodness.
suspect for something.
Yes.
You could have an OnlyFans
The
channel.
outfits.
Oh my
boat
gosh. My
Aaron
gosh.
Baker wore them pretty well, though,
yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
He always looked the
Yeah,
best
he
in the
did.
gym every day,
Yeah.
didn't he?
Yeah. Aaron is just.
Is he a preacher now?
Yeah. I
He
heard
is,
that he
huh?
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had talked one time. He
You know who
was.
Aaron Baker is? Or?
Yeah.
remember, yeah,
Aaron was
Batman.
just ahead of his time. I mean, he almost got into pro wrestling. He was an amazing artist.
Yeah.
He could do all these. Aaron was just like, he was just on a different level. I mean, I had the honor of standing on stage with him, but I idolized him because he worked at what was it? That little store, Max Muscle.
He worked
So
there?
so I would literally drive from Fresno just to go to that Max Muscle and I'd just sit there and stare at him and
Dude,
stuff
he was
like that.
unbelievable.
geez.
And think about the bodies we saw, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you went to Gold's Venice and it sucks that now like none of the stars are there, you know.
Even like we had the opportunity to walk into Weeder's office, you know, just sitting down there waiting, and then walk in his office and seeing all the crazy artifacts he had from history.
I wonder if we'd feel the same way today, like how rich it actually was walking in there. Like it seemed like a museum, right?
Oh,
You were
yeah.
kind of nervous.
Yeah,
You were like,
yeah.
oh my God, I'm going to talk to Joe.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I remember like you couldn't go in there without him making you pose.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would be so out of shape. We'd come in a suit and tie. He's like, take that shit off. Let me. But he just loved the sport. And then to find out that he hardly ever made any money. He just loved the sport and just kept investing more and more. You know, it's very rare. But yeah, again, man, I just want to give you your flowers while you're still here.
Well, I mean,
You know?
I think he said it well. Like we speak for you, inspired all of us. You know what I mean? Walking into Gold's Gym Venice and magazines, and so
That's what it's about, inspiring people. Try to do.
when you heading back,
Tomorrow.
you excited or?
Yeah, I miss my family. Yeah.
Well, we got you in just in time, so we
Thank
appreciate
you. I
it. coming on,
appreciate it.
man. Yeah. Good.
We're out.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That was great.
How long?
Hours and 23 minutes.